Chapter 1090. The first thing they did after entering the temple was to offer incense. Empress Liang took the incense from Yuan Kong and knelt down devoutly. The other women took the incense prepared by the monks and knelt down along with Empress Liang. Because Chu Qingyan was the future consort of the King of England, she stood closer to the front. When she bent down and looked up, she saw the golden body of Buddha sitting on the lotus platform. Those emotionless eyes seemed to be looking at her. She originally followed the others to offer incense casually, but now she couldn't help but straighten her back. With respect in her eyes, she sincerely inserted the incense into the incense burner. Although she had met Su Jian, who wanted to lead her into Buddhism not long after she arrived in the capital, she had stubbornly refused and said some words to refute him. But in her heart, she still respected Buddhism very much. After transmigrating here, even if she didn't believe in Buddhism, gods, ghosts, or demons before, she now held a reverence for reincarnation. When they returned to their original position, Chu Qingyan suddenly remembered that Su Jian seemed to be the senior monk of Hugua Temple. When she saw him 4 years ago, he was in Jiang Kingdom. Now that so many years had passed, she didn't know if he had returned from his travels. If he had already returned, she really wanted to pay him a visit and personally thank him again for what happened that year. After offering incense, the abbot saw that everyone looked tired, so he asked the monks to lead them to a side room in the backyard. "Master, look." Chu Qingyan was walking forward with the monk who led the way when her sleeve was suddenly tugged. She turned her head and saw Xining giving her a look. She couldn't help but follow her line of sight and saw the two sisters, Liang Danjing and Liang Danbing, standing not far behind her. She didn't expect them to also come. But thinking about it, this was organized by Empress Liang, so she definitely wouldn't forget her family. The Liang sisters also saw her. Liang Danjing smiled and nodded, but Liang Danbing was a proud and arrogant person. She did not maintain a peaceful appearance like her sister. She pulled her lower lip and gave a provocative look. She didn't want to bother with them. Just as she was about to withdraw her gaze, she saw Xining winking at her. She raised her eyebrows and looked over again. This time, she saw Meng Shishu, Jing Mingzhu, and Yao Ruoying, who had a strange smile on her face. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a headache coming on. It couldn't be, right? This wave of little demons had all come. Xining and Jasper looked at her sympathetically. "Master, it seems that we are going to face a lot of demons and ghosts this time." Chu Qingyan heaved a deep sigh. "I accept it. I'll just treat it as subduing demons and demons to maintain the peace of the world." Xining was amused, and Jasper couldn't help but curve her lips. When she entered the rear courtyard, Chu Qingyan inadvertently glanced over and saw the young man from before at the entrance of the temple. Only this time, his side was facing her. He had a very ordinary appearance, but the aura he exuded was not ordinary. She felt that it was a bit strange. But after turning a corner, she couldn't see him anymore. She temporarily put this strange feeling in her heart and didn't think about it anymore. The young man turned around and looked in the direction Chu Qingyan left. At this time, Xiaoran walked over. When he saw the direction the young man was looking, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "You also know Qingyan?" "I don't know her." The young man smiled and shook his head. "I guessed that you didn't know her either. She just returned to the capital not long ago, so you probably haven't seen her before." Xiaoran thought he understood, but when it came to Chu Qingyan, he had a lot to say. "Doesn't she look very cute?" The young man's gaze was fixed on Xiaoran, and then he smiled. "She's young, so she's quite delicate." Xiaoran felt that the word delicate had nothing to do with Qingyan. In his opinion, Qingyan was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life. But it wasn't appropriate to discuss this with him. He gave a low cough and talked about the guards. The young man also recovered his serious expression and answered all the questions. The sky gradually darkened, and the people far away in the mountain forest were trying hard to find the best place to hide. What to do, what to do? This is already the last chance. Where should I hide? Pang Zhijing carried a small cloth bag, and washed her face with the river water as she muttered. Time was constantly passing, and she didn't have much time left. But she had overestimated her own ability. With her incomplete body, she wouldn't be able to run far. She angrily picked up a stone and threw it at the river. She was so angry that she was about to go crazy. And at this time, she looked at the stone that fell into the water with a splash and suddenly had an idea. It's really a case of searching high and low only to find it without any effort. She stood up, put her hands on her hips and laughed to the sky. This time, let's see how you'll find me. Lord, follow the footprints until here, there's no more nearby. The subordinate quickly came back to report. Xiao Ho glanced around, expand the area and continue to search. According to her speed, she wouldn't have run far. Yes. The subordinate responded and immediately scattered. Lord, there's a river in front. Do you want to go there and wash your face? The subordinate following him asked. After walking for a day, he was a little sweaty. Xiao Ho nodded. Strolling to the river, Xiao Ho squatted down and scooped some water to wash his face. He felt a lot more refreshed. He stood up, and with his hands behind his back, he waited for the news from his subordinates. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the people who were searching came back. Lord, we've searched this place, but we still haven't found any trace of the princess. Xiao Ho frowned. Logically speaking, she should be around here. It's impossible for her to disappear into thin air. How could they not find her? He looked at the sky and pondered for a moment. His hand reached into his sleeve and was about to take out the compass that Pang Huang left behind. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw a bamboo pipe undulating on the river. The corner of his mouth rose slightly and he retracted his hand. There's no need to search. Xiao Ho's words left everyone scratching their heads in confusion. At this moment, Xiao Ho smiled and returned to the shore. With a wave of his long arm, a long bamboo pipe appeared in his fingers. He played with it in the palm of his hand and waited quietly. After a while, the calm river surface suddenly had a few more bubbles. Not long after, there was a gulu gulu sound. Splash, there was a splash of water and a person stood up from the water. The guards on the shore pulled out their long swords and pointed at the water surface. Cough cough, Pang Zhijing wiped the water on her face. She was in a sorry state and desperately gasped for breath. You sinister, bad guy. You actually took away my bamboo pipe. Xiao Ho raised his hand to get the guards to keep their weapons. He looked at her calmly. If I didn't use this move, how would I be able to find the princess? But I have to say that the princess' hiding place this time is indeed a little innovative. Her bamboo pipe was taken away from the river surface by him, she drank a stomach full of water and was even ridiculed by him. She was in a sorry state. If she could tolerate it, what more could she tolerate? Taking advantage of his unpreparedness, she bent down and splashed water on him. Xiao Ho didn't expect her to be so shameless. In a moment of carelessness, his clothes were drenched by her. Looking at his sleeves, he couldn't help but frown. But the person in the river was still laughing happily. This feeling of being attacked so openly was a little unfamiliar to him. Chapter 1091. Pang Zhijing's laughter was so blatant and unbridled that she did not notice the person standing on the shore, whose face was becoming more and more gloomy. Even those guards could feel their lord's gloomy mood. They couldn't help but want to retreat, but in the end, they stood still and lowered their heads even more to prevent themselves from being implicated. Princess, please take care of yourself. After the laughter died down, Pang Zhijing finally reacted. Her palms slowly propped up her knees as the figure in front of her slowly entered her field of vision. She suddenly felt that something was wrong. At this time, she happened to meet Xiao Ho's expressionless face, without that gentle jade-like smile. His dark green cloak fluttered in the dark and his threatening figure made this person look even more gloomy like a ghost. She subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. I was just joking. Are you alright? She was so nervous that she stuttered. Although she despised her own cowardice, a wise man submits to circumstances. This moment of weakness was for the sake of a better future. She comforted herself like this. Xiao Ho indifferently looked at her. Princess is in such a good mood, but this king hates jokes the most. This voice was so cold that it could freeze people to death. Pang Zhijing shrunk her neck back and rubbed her arms with her hands. She gave a flattering smile. All right, all right, all right. I won't joke with you in the future. Don't lower yourself to my level. Xiao Ho's expression did not soften because of her words, but when he stared at her, his eyes suddenly became strange. Pang Zhijing did not notice it at first, but later on, she felt that something was wrong and followed his gaze to look at herself. Summer clothes were thin and with the addition of the water, they stuck to her body, revealing her exquisite curves. She gave a scream and her entire body was submerged in the water, only revealing her head. Xiao Ho's ears were ringing from her earth-shattering scream, but he still gave a low cough and looked away. Ah, 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 ah. She was really too stupid to not notice it. Luckily, due to Xiao Ho's intimidation, those guards did not raise their heads. Pang Zhijing's heart was slightly comforted. However, she was very sure that Xiao Ho had seen her naked. Just as she was glaring angrily at Xiao Ho, she suddenly heard him say, "The sky is getting dark. If Princess wishes to continue staying in the water, then this prince will not accompany you." After saying that, Xiao Ho turned around without hesitation. Hey, hey, hey. Leaving just like that? That's too ungentlemanly. Seeing that he had really left, leaving only the guards to guard her, Pang Zhijing immediately shouted. She couldn't let him leave just like that. Otherwise, how could she go ashore when she was drenched? Xiao Ho turned to look at her and raised his eyebrows. Gentlemanly? That's an interesting term. Just when she thought he was going to leave without mercy, she saw him put his hand on the belt and untied the cloak. Holding it in his hand, he bent down and put it on the ground. Then he got up and strode into the deep forest where the flames were burning. He had already taken a few steps when she realized that he had left for her. Blinking her eyes, she scrambled to the shore and pulled up her cloak to cover herself. She had to admit that although he looked sickly thin, he was very tall. The cloak was folded a few times on the ground, but it still carried his body temperature. It was very warm and there was even a faint herbal fragrance. She wrapped the cloak tightly around herself and ran towards Xiao Ho without thinking. Wait a minute. I want to talk to you. Xiao Ho felt that his patience had been worn down by her. He stopped and wanted to see what other tricks she had up her sleeves. After a while, he saw her stumbling towards him and his tightly knitted brows suddenly relaxed. What does Princess want to talk about? The wind blew past and blew away the cold aura around him, returning him to the elegant and noble lord. Pang Zhijing panted lightly. After she exhaled the foul air in her body, she straightened up and looked at him with bright eyes. She didn't care what kind of gaze he was using to look at her as she spoke to him resolutely. Xiao Ho, I want to make a deal with you. Xiao Ho was a little surprised and his voice carried a taunting smile. Princess, don't forget that you have already used up your 3 chances. You don't have the qualifications to bargain with this king. Pang Zhijing's face turned slightly hot. This was the first time someone had called her shameless, but for freedom and to not be controlled by others, she could still afford to lose this bit of face. Xiao Ho saw that she was filled with shame and anger, but she quickly gathered her courage. Looking at him with sparkling eyes, he was slightly stunned. Of course I know that I no longer have a chance to escape and I have also proven your intelligence. As long as you don't let me go, I will not be able to escape from your hands, so why should I make a final struggle? She said this with a sigh. She had used her blood and tears to prove this fact. Although she was gritting her teeth, she had no choice but to admit defeat. Xiao Ho expressed his agreement and waited for her to continue. After Pang Zhijing sighed in self-abasement, she said with a firm gaze, Xiao Ho, since you need a princess like me, then I think I have the qualifications to make a deal with you. After entering your Sichuan's capital, I will do my best to help you with whatever you need me to do. However, as long as you achieve what you want, you will set me free and not make things difficult for me. What do you think of this deal? Xiao Ho looked at her with an inquisitive gaze. Wasn't this a deal that you made with your brother, the crown prince? Don't you think it's unnecessary to cooperate with this king? Pang Zhijing gave a self-deprecating laugh. Do you think I will believe a person who pushes my little sister into a pit of fire? Then why do you believe this king? Although this king will not personally push you into a pit like your brother, I am still an accomplice. Xiao Ho was a little confused. Why do I believe him? She had never thought of this question before. Xiao Ho's question had stunned her. Was it because although he was an accomplice, he did not actually harm her? Although he forced her step by step, he was willing to leave the cloak to her. Although he was still unwilling to let her go, he did not make things difficult for her in other aspects. She couldn't help but tightly grasp the cloak as she questioned herself. These seemed like answers, but they also seemed like questions that she couldn't understand. She simply gave up thinking and looked up with puffed cheeks as she said, maybe it's because your cloak has the aura of my old friend, so I feel that you are a trustworthy person. Xiao Ho, who had only paid attention to her to pass the time, heard her answer. His gaze focused and he looked directly at her. He was a little surprised, a little amazed, and an indescribable feeling grew in his heart. Trustworthy? This really was an unfamiliar word. After she finished speaking, she didn't see any reaction from him. Pang Zhijing walked 2 steps towards him and stood in front of him. She asked angrily, I already told you the reason, so why are you ignoring me? Xiao Ho came back to his senses and looked at the angry girl in front of him. He slowly said, why are you so sure that this king will cooperate with you? Chapter 1092. Pang Zhijing's face was filled with anticipation, but a bucket of cold water was poured over her head. She felt her entire heart turn cold. She no longer cared about being reserved as she reached out to grab his arm. She flew into a rage. How can you say that? Could it be that after being friends for so many days, it's not enough for you to show some compassion to me? She was standing too close and when she made her move, he could not react in time. At this moment, his hand was being held by her hot fingers and his skin was a bit hot. He narrowed his eyes and wanted to pull his hand back, but she was holding it too tightly. He wanted to use force, but he was afraid of revealing his secret of martial arts, so he couldn't help knitting his brows. Princess, please understand one thing. This king is helping you out of kindness, not helping is my duty. This is not a reason for you to threaten me. Xiao Ho looked at her indifferently. Although the corners of his lips were curled, the smile did not reach his eyes. This sentence woke her up. That's right, he wasn't as simple and crude to her as Pang Huang. It was only because there was no conflict of interest between them. Whether he helped or not, it was all in his hands and she couldn't say anything. She slowly released her fingers and a dejected expression appeared on her face. Xiao Ho's words made her speechless and unable to explain herself. Xiao Ho took a step back and no longer looked at her as he turned to leave. At this time, Pang Zhijing's head drooped down dejectedly as she watched the shadow on the ground slowly leave her line of sight. Her heart slowly tightened. Was she going to accept her fate like this? With Pang Huang's personality, once he completed his goal, would he still let her live in this world? She still hadn't found a way to go back, so she couldn't die like this. When the wind blew, the bells on her feet made a jingling sound. It was clear and pleasant to the ears, but most beautiful things had thorns. So it became her restriction. Restriction. An idea flashed through her mind. Wait. Xiao Ho stopped in his tracks. He didn't know what she wanted to do, but he still slowly turned around. Does Princess have any other advice? His gaze was as gentle as water, but in her eyes, it was like a pool of emotionless stagnant water. He indifferently watched her struggle and wasn't willing to lend a helping hand. She steadied her mind and walked in front of him again. Her expression was much calmer than before. Didn't you just ask me why I should cooperate with you? All right, I'll tell you now. Xiao Ho raised his eyebrows. She took a deep breath and looked at him with wide eyes. You know martial arts. You're not sick. As soon as she finished speaking, her neck was suddenly grabbed by a hand. Before she could feel the pain, she quickly retreated and her back hit a tree trunk. She felt that her internal organs were about to be displaced, but that wasn't the scariest thing. It was that her neck was about to be broken by him. She couldn't breathe. She wanted to scream for help, but there was no one else here other than him. Xiao Ho, are you planning to silence me? But don't forget, I am a princess. When the time comes to investigate, you won't be able to escape responsibility. She spat out these words with difficulty as her entire face turned red. Every time she said a word, her mind would go blank. I hate threats the most. This king remembers reminding you. Xiao Ho's smile was the same as before, but his eyes were as cold as ice. All right, just kill me. I don't like this place anyway. I've already died once, so I'm not afraid of dying again. She closed her eyes, looking like she was ready to die. Xiao Ho's eyes fell onto this beautiful face that was as pale as paper. He was completely disheartened, as if he had already given up on struggling. Memories of his youth suddenly flashed through his mind and he was stunned. His fingers had already let go at an unknown time and he had already slid down from the tree trunk to sit on the ground, desperately coughing. Xiao Ho, if you don't kill me this time, you can't go back on your word and make a move against me. Pang Zhijing never thought that he would let her go. The feeling of having a new lease on life filled her heart. She could still feel her wildly beating heart that did not have any rhythm, as if it was reminding her that she had just returned from the gates of hell. Xiao Ho took back his hand and placed it behind his back. He looked down at her in a condescending manner. You really think you can threaten this king? She took a deep breath and raised her head. Her eyes stared right at him. Her voice was hoarse and unpleasant to hear, but there was a trace of cunning in it. Although I don't know much about your Sichuan, but in the past few days, I have still inquired about you. You have been weak and sickly since you were young, without the strength to even truss up a chicken. Many people doubt if you can live for long. Because of this, you have been using precious medicines to keep your life, giving people the illusion that you don't have long to live and that you don't have any strength left. In reality, you are using this kind of method to confuse people, making those opponents ignore your existence, so you can secretly develop your own power. Right now, you are waiting for an opportunity. When the time comes, you will be like a hibernating black panther, suddenly jumping out to kill or reap the benefits. Am I right to say this? Although she made a solemn vow, no one knew that her palms were sweaty and her body was trembling under the cloak. If it wasn't for the fact that she was sitting with her back against the tree, she probably wouldn't have been able to support herself. As for Xiao Ho, when she began to speak, his smile slowly disappeared. His eyes narrowed bit by bit, as if this was the first time he saw the person in front of him. Could it be that she had been pretending in the past? His heart could not help but be filled with doubts. Tell me, how did you know? His voice was filled with danger. What a joke, how could she tell him that she had learned this from novels? The weak and sickly lord, who looked like he did not have any killing power, was actually the most sinister person. Of course it's because I'm smart and saw through it myself. How about it, such a smart partner, do you still want to push it away? If you pass this village, there won't be another shop like this. If you're not willing, then forget it. She arrogantly raised her head, but it was a pity that her face was pale and the bruises on her neck greatly reduced her expression. Xiao Ho was silent for a moment before finally looking at her with a burning gaze. Since the princess has invited me with such great hospitality, then this king has no reason to reject. All right. She suppressed the wild joy in her heart and pretended to be calm as she raised her hand. Then let's strike our palms to form an alliance. If one side violates the agreement, then they will leave this world and go to where they should go. No matter if it's another world or heaven or hell, in short, it will be like this. This agreement sounded very strange, but Xiao Ho did not mind. He reached out his hand and lightly struck her. That's great. After Pang Zhijing said this, her consciousness finally blurred. Xiao Ho looked at the person in his arms. Her face was flushed red and her body was burning hot. It was clear that she had already lost consciousness. He frowned, wondering if he should throw her here for the guards to deal with, but in the end, when he thought of her world-weary expression under his palm, he gave a self-deprecating sigh and used his hands to pick her up. Just treat it as the alliance being formed, giving her the first advantage. Chapter 1093. In the night, Pang Huang sat on a cushion. Beside him was Pang Zhijing, who was clinging onto him like an octopus. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull her away. Because of a moment of softness, he carried her back. In the end, it proved to be a problem for him. It was obvious that she had caught a cold and had a fever. She was still wearing wet clothes. However, there were no women in his entourage, so he couldn't help her change her clothes. In the end, he could only use his inner energy to dry her clothes. Master, the Southern Heavens envoy group has already arrived at the next town. When do we set off? The subordinate asked. Xiao Ho ordered, find a carriage. We'll set off at dawn. Yes, master. The bonfire burned quietly. There were guards patrolling all around. Xiao Ho picked up the water bag and was about to open it when he suddenly heard a low murmur. I want to go home. Dad, Mom, I miss you so much, it came from beside him. He lowered his head and saw Pang Zhijing, who was sleeping very uncomfortably. She was saying something in a hoarse voice. His gaze fell on the bruises on her neck. Finally, he looked away. Invite Mr. Li over. Xiao Ho said in a low voice. Soon, a man in his 30s or 40s came over with a medicine box. He immediately sized him up. Lord, are you feeling unwell? It's not this prince, it's her. Xiao Ho said warmly. Mr. Li was surprised when he saw the woman leaning so close to his lord. After so many years, this was the first time he saw a woman by his lord's side. He didn't dare to delay. He immediately put down the medicine box and crouched down to take her pulse. Don't touch me. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to be with a demon. Pang Zhijing unconsciously pushed Mr. Li's hand away and rubbed her whole body against Xiao Ho's side. Xiao Ho's eyes twitched. Demon? He didn't hesitate to pull her wrist out and handed it to Mr. Li. Mr. Li, who had been unable to touch Pang Zhijing all this time, looked at his lord in surprise. Then, he took Pang Zhijing's pulse, not daring to think too much. After a while, Mr. Li withdrew his hand and stroked his beard with a strange expression. Lord, the princess's body is weak. Plus, she's been soaking in the water for too long and has caught a cold. She's a little feverish now, but that's not important. As long as she drinks my decoction later and sweats a little, her illness will be mostly cured. It's just that, go on. This was within his expectations, but Mr. Li's words made him focus. Mr. Li muttered to himself for a while before sighing, this southern blue princess is suffering from a slow-acting poison. In less than a year, the poison will act up. Xiao Ho was slightly stunned. What poison? There's a tyrannical poison in the southern blue continent called life-severing. Mr. Li stroked his beard and shook his head. It's not that there's no way to detoxify this poison. It's just that the method is very complicated, and I don't have that ability. How long has this poison been in her body? It should be 2 months. Xiao Ho pondered for a moment. It just so happened that she was poisoned when she left the southern blue continent for Sichuan. The poison had been dormant for a year. At that time, her mission in Sichuan would have been completed. He suddenly understood why she said she didn't trust Pang Huang. Perhaps she didn't know that Pang Huang had poisoned her, but she was already subconsciously wary of Pang Huang. Through this matter, he also indirectly understood Pang Huang's character. In order to achieve his goals, he would do anything, and he would keep his promises. As expected, he was a qualified partner. There's one more thing. Mr. Li's words attracted Xiao Ho's attention. The princess's leg injury wasn't that serious in the beginning. Even if she was injured a few more times, it wouldn't affect her recovery. However, her leg injury has dragged on for so long because of an external cause. What external cause? Xiao Ho asked. Someone tampered with the princess's medicine. Or rather, the princess's medicine was skimped on. Out of 10, the medicine's efficacy was only 30%. It delayed the wound's recovery. Based on the dosage of the medicine, it would probably take her until the capital to fully recover. Mr. Li's words caused Xiao Ho to involuntarily look at Pang Zhijing. It was likely that Pang Huang had tampered with the medicine to prevent her from escaping. At this time, Mr. Li saw that he had sunk into deep thought and didn't dare disturb him. He went to brew the medicine. After the medicine was brewed, Mr. Li helped Pang Zhijing drink it and then left. Hot, so hot, the medicine began to take effect. Pang Zhijing couldn't help but tug at the cloak on her body. In the end, she flung it to the side. Her entire body was like a loach. When Xiao Ho wasn't paying attention, she burrowed into his arms. Then, she found a comfortable position in his arms and fell asleep. When Xiao Ho lowered his head, she was already sleeping soundly in his arms. Her cheeks were pink from the effects of the medicine. In this kind of dark night, it was like a piece of fruit that gave off a sweet smell. Just now, he didn't know who it was that said to stay away from a demon like him. In the end, she still ran in herself. He curled his lips and shook his head. He wanted to reach out and push her away, but at this time, he suddenly felt his body lose strength. The blood in his body flowed slower. He couldn't help but frown and lean against the tree trunk. He slowly adjusted his breathing. He couldn't care about the person in his arms. After a moment, he opened his eyes again. The clothes on his back were already soaked, but his breathing had stabilized. After so many years, his body had been close to normal. He didn't get sick anymore. But today, it suddenly acted up. Was it because of emotional fluctuations? He couldn't help but lower his head and look at the person in his arms. Because of her. Although Pang Zhijing's life wasn't worth worrying about, looking at this sleeping innocent girl, her experiences overlapped with his own, evoking memories of his youth. He leaned against the tree trunk and looked at the night sky above his head. Suddenly, the corners of his lips curled up. Fate played tricks on him. It turned out that he and her were only chess pieces in the hands of the heavens. But he didn't believe that he would be so useless for the rest of his life. No one could control his future. Pang Zhijing, who was in a deep sleep, probably didn't know that the reason why she was able to work with Xiao Ho so smoothly and receive his leniency when she was sick, was because he saw his own shadow in her. He was the one who was wronged, lonely and proud, licking his wounds alone. In the Hugua temple, everything was quiet. Chu Qingyan was served by the maids. After she finished washing up, she prepared to read a book before going to bed to rest. This temple is really different from normal people's homes. It is clean and tidy without any excess. The vegetarian food is also unique, but it is a bit plain. Xining said as she wiped the table. Chu Qingyan said with a smile, "It seems that you are very satisfied with the temple. How about I tell the masters and see if they still need a disciple and send you over?" Xining immediately shouted, "Master, please spare this servant. This servant wants to be with you forever." The people in the room couldn't help laughing. Chu Qingyan shook her head and laughed. From the corner of her eyes, she saw the guard standing not far away from the window and suddenly thought of something. "I think I might have to go out tonight." Her gaze was slightly heavy and her tone was very calm. Chapter 1094. "Mistress, what is it that needs to be done at night? Can't we do it tomorrow during the day?" Seeing her mistress change into a servant's uniform, Xining asked in confusion. After finishing her preparations, Chu Qingyan lightly patted Xining's head and smiled, "Of course it's something that can't be seen in public. Otherwise, why would your mistress sacrifice her sleep time to go out? Then why don't you bring this servant along?" Xining blinked her eyes, flashing with a light that begged to be taken away. "Silly girl, we're not going out to play. I'm just going to verify something." After saying this, she pinched her little face and told her to obediently wait for them to come back. She then called Jasper and went out. As soon as they went out, they were met with patrolling guards. "2 misses, it's so late. Where are you going?" one of the guards asked politely. Chu Qingyan glanced at Jasper, and Jasper immediately went forward and replied, "My mistress lost an earring when she entered the temple today. She ordered us to go out and look for it. Does that miss know where it was dropped? We can help look for it." The guard inquired. "It's probably in the courtyard in front. You don't have to trouble yourselves. We can look for it ourselves and report to my mistress later." Jasper continued. "Okay, then be careful." The guard retreated. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Jasper nodded at each other and walked towards the small forest in front. After reaching the depths, Chu Qingyan stood still and leaned against a tree trunk with a leisurely expression. "Mistress, aren't we going to continue?" Jasper was confused. Didn't she say that they were going out to look for someone? But now looking at her mistress who was looking around, she was very puzzled. Chu Qingyan changed into a more comfortable position. When she was about to explain, her eyes suddenly focused and she raised her eyebrows. "I think, the person I'm waiting for is here." Before Jasper could understand, she saw her master slowly turn around and look into the darkness of the forest. The smile on her face was unfathomable. They saw a figure walking towards them from afar. He was wearing ordinary clothes and had a tall figure. His steps were leisurely, and he exuded a charming aura from head to toe. However, when he reached the light, the face that appeared before them was too ordinary. It was so ordinary that if he was thrown into a crowd, he would be drowned out. "Who are you?" Jasper immediately stood in front of her to protect her master. She was very alert. That young man did not say a word. He did not care about Baiyu at all. Instead, his gaze landed on Chu Qingyan, who was behind Baiyu. His lips curled into a mysterious smile, making it hard for anyone to guess what he was thinking. "Jasper, don't worry. Go to the side and keep watch. See if anyone is coming." Chu Qingyan patted her shoulder, indicating for her to relax. Jasper saw that her mistress had spoken and did not say anything more. She immediately retreated to the side. While being vigilant of the surroundings, her eyes swept over the young man from time to time. From the intuition of a martial artist, this person was unfathomable. Moreover, his martial arts were above hers. She could not help but be wary of him. Chu Qingyan returned her gaze to the young man in front of her. Spreading out her hands, she said, "My servant girls are more sensitive. Don't mind them. Since they are your people, why would I mind?" The young man was still smiling. Towards her words, he gave an ambiguous answer. "All right, I won't beat around the bush with you." Chu Qingyan crossed her arms and leaned against the tree. She curled her lips. "What should I call you now? Higashio Motetsu? Or Xiao Ran's subordinate, Mr. Donghua?" The smile on the young man's lips finally turned into a sincere smile. He raised his hand to brush his cheek. When he withdrew his hand, there was a thin human skin mask on his finger. When he raised his head, his devilishly charming appearance was revealed under the moonlight. His frivolous expression was just like before. "I told you, no one can imitate your devilish aura. You can't erase this aura. It really is you." Chu Qingyan was stunned. Then she said unhappily. Higashio Motetsu chuckled, "I was just about to ask you how you recognized me. Now it seems that you care too much about me. Even if I disguise myself 1,000 times, you can still recognize me at a glance. Your skin is really thick. It's comparable to the capital's city walls." Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. He smiled proudly. Regardless of what she said, he slowly put away the mask in his hand. "All right, actually I guessed it was you because of the red mole on your ring finger. The first time I saw you, I felt inexplicably familiar. Later, when I saw you for the second time, I noticed your finger and made a bold guess. Finally, I confirmed that it was when you appeared in this forest. Higashio Motetsu's eyes were smiling as he listened to her slowly dissect him. I just wandered around in front of the guards. You should have received the news. If you are Dongting, you should be able to guess what I am doing out here in the middle of the night. Then, you should show up and meet this old friend of mine. As soon as she finished speaking, Dongting Wangyu clapped her hands and praised, "You are indeed the witty and intelligent little girl on the battlefield. You only used a little trick to lure me out. Don't give me that." He knew that she went to the battlefield, but she was a little surprised that he actually knew what happened to her on the battlefield. However, she didn't ask him about it. Instead, she changed the topic. "How have you been recently? Why did you come here?" Hearing this, Higashio Motetsu slowly lowered his eyes. His eyes flashed with a strange emotion. Some words were on the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't say them out loud. He smiled faintly, and his tone was still as flippant as before. "I have nothing to do, so I wandered around when I was bored." You're really unrestrained. Her heart moved, and she suppressed the thoughts in her mind. She joked, "Speaking of which, if I didn't recognize you, did you plan to not recognize me? Since I'm here, of course it's to see you. Otherwise, why would I let myself suffer like this?" He leaned against the parasol tree in front of her and sighed. He spoke as if he had been wronged. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up slightly. So he appeared beside Xiao Ran because he wanted to take the opportunity to see her. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her and took in her expression. He took out the folding fan at his waist and fanned himself, covering the changing expression on his face. "I've been in the capital for a while. I wanted to find a chance to see you, but you didn't go out. I wanted to visit your manor, but I was worried about your jealous fiancé. After thinking about it, I decided to forget about it. The day before yesterday, I heard that you were coming to Hugua Temple, so I made some arrangements. That's why I have today's identity." Hearing him speak with assurance, Chu Qingyan's smile didn't change, but the smile in her eyes faded. Chapter 1095. When Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows again, she sneered, "It seems that I have to thank you for your deep affection for me. And apologize for not going out these days. Did you go through so much trouble to arrange this reunion?" Higashio Motetsu chuckled. "We're close friends. You don't have to treat me like an outsider. I'm just giving you some color, and you're starting a dye house." Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes again, then straightened up and stood still on the ground. She asked, "How long do you plan to stay here? Are you going to chase me away as soon as I come?" Higashio Motetsu squeezed out a pitiful expression, as if he didn't know how to read people. Chu Qingyan was amused by his wacky look. She shook her head. "You're the young palace master of a famous sect in the pugilistic world. Is it really okay for others to see you like this? A real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall." "I don't care about trifles," he said rather proudly. Chu Qingyan really wanted to ignore such a thick-skinned person, but she remembered something. "Oh right, Xioli also came to the capital. She and I want to open a shop in the capital to promote the continuation of our products. This is a gathering place for high officials and nobles. As long as one of us comes to buy the so-called Golden Cave, it will spread faster than Jiangnan. When the time comes, the money will roll in." Seeing her eyes flash with money and immersed in the joy of making money, Higashio Motetsu's gaze couldn't help but soften a little, and the devilish aura on his body faded a little. "So the purpose of you telling me all this is to catch me as a strong man?" Chu Qingyan blinked, then her eyes curved into crescents as she pretended to smile. "How is this catching a strong man? I'm making money together with everyone. Don't think of me as such a cunning person." Higashio Motetsu smiled, his almond-shaped eyes overflowing with beauty. "I haven't forgotten why you dragged me into the sea back then. Poor me, the young palace master who usually doesn't look at the account books and should live like a prince, but I have to run for my life with you. Don't you feel that you owe me?" Chu Qingyan said grumpily, "If there's money to be made, I'll share it with you, and you're actually complaining? Forget it, I don't care if you want this opportunity or not. If you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one. Don't come crying to me when the time comes. Looking at her angry face, Dongting Wangyu became absent-minded for a moment. It added a touch of liveliness to her pretty face. It had been more than half a year since they last met. He realized that every time they met, she would always bring him surprises. 15 years old was the age when one was as green as a flower. She was like a budding flower, slowly opening her petals. At this time, she hadn't truly bloomed, but her stunning appearance was already revealed. Regardless of whether she was wearing a servant's outfit or an ordinary one, it was difficult to conceal the brilliance that radiated from her body. Alright, then I won't interfere with your opening ceremony. But if you need help, you can ask me for help at any time, he said with a smile in his eyes. These words made Chu Qingyan's eyes flash slightly, but under the cover of the night, Higashio Motetsu didn't notice. She revealed a look of disdain. Forget it. You shouldn't have been in the capital for long. What extra ability do you have to help me? It's more practical for me to ask His Highness for help. Higashio Motetsu shrugged. You said it yourself. When the time comes, don't blame me for not helping you. Humph, I won't, alright. Just as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she heard Jasper's voice. Master, someone's coming. She and Higashio Motetsu looked at each other. It looks like I have to leave first. See you again when I have time. After saying this, she waved at Jasper and immediately left the small forest. Higashio Motetsu looked in the direction that she disappeared. In the dark night, his cynical smile slowly faded. Before coming, he had planned to have an open and honest talk with her. He knew that what she disliked the most was deception. But when he saw her, he forgot his original intention. In other words, he subconsciously didn't want to tell her so soon. There were some things that you could maintain on the surface. Once it was broken, it would be hard to restore it to its original state. She was a person who dared to love and hate. She didn't ask for absolute honesty from her friends, but she didn't allow any flaws or deceit in their friendship. But if he had to choose between delaying the death of 1,000 cuts or immediately cutting off their relationship, he was willing to hide the truth. If she found out one day, he would have no complaints or regrets. He was a person who never did things that he regretted. Facing the night wind, his phoenix eyes rippled. When he took a closer look, his devilish smile returned. He raised his hand to wipe his face and returned to that ordinary young man. He lifted his foot and left unhurriedly. Chu Qingyan and her servant, who were walking back quickly, hadn't reached their room yet when they saw Xiao Ran standing at the door talking to Xining. Chu Qingyan and Jasper looked at each other. She immediately said, "Go in through the window." Quietly avoiding everyone's gaze, Jasper opened the window and nimbly jumped in. After confirming that it was safe, she turned around and nodded to her master. Chu Qingyan nodded and also jumped into the room. Your master went to bed so early? Xiao Ran stood in front of Xining with a box of food in his hand. He was a little disappointed. Yes, maybe he's tired from the journey, so he went to bed early. After Xining finished answering, her palms were sweaty. Why wasn't master back yet? At this time, a clear voice came from the room. Xining, who are you talking to outside? Xining's eyes lit up and she immediately said, It's His Highness the Fourth Prince. Xiao Ran also recognized her voice and quickly said, Qingyan, it's me. I brought you something. At this time, the door opened. Chu Qingyan stood at the door and said with a smile, So it's you. I was wondering who would come over so late at night. When Xiao Ran saw her smiling in front of him, he was a little dazed for a moment. But he didn't forget the purpose of his visit and handed the box of food in his hand to her. I took this from Imperial Mother. I've already eaten it and it tastes really good. I wanted to give it to you to try. Chu Qingyan took it and then handed it to Xining. She thanked Xiao Ran, You're really a good friend. You even thought of me. Then I won't be polite and accept it. No need to be so polite. Well, since you're preparing to sleep, I won't disturb you. Have a good rest. It's been a tiring journey. Xiao Ran didn't know where to put his hands. He raised his hand to touch his nose and smiled shyly. He waved his hand and went back the way he came. Chu Qingyan watched Xiao Ran's receding figure, and the words that Xiao Li said to her before echoed in her mind. The smile on her face slowly disappeared. With Xiao Li's reminder, although she didn't take it to heart, she still heard it. Now that she saw how much he cared about her, the balance in her heart couldn't help but tilt towards Xiao Li's words. She restrained her expression and her eyes were as clear as water. She hoped that she and Xiao Ran were just friends and that there weren't any other feelings that shouldn't be mixed. Chapter 1096. When the door was closed again, Jasper walked to the center of the room with a puzzled look on her face. Master, who was the person you saw in the forest just now? Chu Qingyan replied, Higashio Motetsu, the young palace master of the Moon Palace. He previously cooperated with me and Xiuli in Jiangnan. Jasper suddenly understood. She had heard of this person in Jiangnan, but she had not been by her master's side at that time, so she had only heard of his name but had never seen him in person. Xining looked surprised. Young Master Dongting is also here. Yes. Chu Qingyan nodded, but the smile on her face was very faint. From their conversation just now, it seemed that he was hiding something from her and did not tell her the truth. This made her feel a little strange. Seeing that her master was not very interested, Xining did not ask any more questions. Instead, she opened the food box that Xiao Ran had brought over and saw that there were red and green pastries inside. It was very beautiful. Master, do you want to try the pastries? I think I'll pass. You can eat if you want, but you have to test for poison first. Chu Qingyan instructed. Once bitten, twice shy. The first time she had gone to the gates of hell, she had relied on the pastries that Xiao Ran had brought out from the palace. Now that this food box had been brought over from his imperial mother, she did not dare to try it. If she had to go to the gates of hell for a day again and did not come back, it would be terrible. Master is right. We still have to be careful here. Xining said seriously. Chu Qingyan smiled, then said, You've been busy all day. Rest early. The two nodded. After changing out of her clothes and lying on the bed, Chu Qingyan felt a little tired. However, her mental strength was still sufficient, and she was unable to fall asleep immediately. In such a quiet place, she felt that her mood was also affected. Her heart was calm, and many things that she had thought of or not thought of appeared in her mind. She recalled the first time she met Dong Ting. It was he who broke into the Wang mansion and held her hostage. At that time, she only thought that this man had a pair of eyes that were prettier than a girl's. The second time they met, he was still holding her hostage in order to hide from her people. He was the first to recognize her. Later on, her memories jumped to the time when he helped her find the herb. Then, his identity was exposed. She realized that she had been deceived and broke off all relations with him. Later on, when they met again many years later, she realized that she didn't hold such a deep grudge against him. Perhaps it was because the pure persistence of friendship was still no match for the corrosion of the beautiful memories of the past. With her hands behind her head, she looked at the Zen character hanging on the wall. Her gaze suddenly became distant. Dong Ting, I hope you won't disappoint me again. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that those memories will make me forgive your betrayal. After closing her eyes, the night went on until dawn. Master, today we are going to the hall to listen to scriptures and Buddha chants. Xining helped her tidy up her clothes as she reported today's itinerary. Chu Qingyan instantly drooped her head. Since young, I have listened to countless lectures and meetings. I thought I had gotten rid of them, but I didn't expect that I still couldn't avoid them. I don't know how long I will have to listen to them this time. Jasper replied, I heard that it will be at least 3 days. Chu Qingyan withered in the wind. 3 days? Because there were morning classes in the temple, everyone rushed to the hall without eating breakfast after they woke up. Good morning to all the benefactresses. Please sit. An eminent monk with white eyebrows sat under the Buddha statue and kindly said to everyone. Chu Qingyan found a seat near the door and sat down. She glanced around and found that most of the people had already arrived. Even Empress Liang was already sitting below the eminent monk, with her two nieces by her side. She turned to Xining behind her and said in a low voice, "Jasper can stay here. You are free to go and find your Jin Xian." "Master." Xining's face turned red. "I know that he is in charge of the security around the hall today. Go quickly. You can't miss this opportunity." Chu Qingyan winked at her. Even Jasper couldn't help but laugh. Xining stomped her feet and ran out. She shook her head. "Look, this girl still can't wait to see her Jin Xian. This shows that although she said no, her body is still very honest." Jasper said seriously, "This subordinate thinks that Xining was scared away." Chu Qingyan blinked. "Jasper, sometimes you still need to be humorous. Otherwise, you will embarrass people." Jasper replied seriously, "This subordinate understands. This subordinate will not casually embarrass Master in the future." 3 black lines slid down her forehead. Chu Qingyan decided to ignore her this morning. At this moment, everyone was focused on the eminent monks chanting in order to show that they were devoted to Buddhism. No one noticed her in the corner. Thus, she closed her eyes and pretended to listen attentively. In fact, she was already playing chess with Zhou Gong. After some time, she felt a light piercing her body and her arm being gently shaken. She couldn't take it anymore and woke up from her sleep. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw countless pairs of eyes staring at her. Some were gloating, some were watching, some were confused, and some were looking at her with disdain. She suddenly woke up. At this moment, she turned her head to look beside her. It was actually Yu Tianyue. She only heard her whisper, "Sister Chu, Reverend is asking you a question." At this moment, Meng Shishu sneered, "Miss Chu, Reverend called you so many times, but you didn't even respond. Could it be that you fell asleep?" These words caused the Empress to reveal displeasure. Her cold gaze swept towards Chu Qingyan. Consort Yu at the side covered her mouth with a handkerchief and snickered as she watched the show. Chu Qingyan immediately entered battle mode, ignoring Meng Shishu's ridicule. She turned to the eminent monk sitting at the head and blamed herself. "Reverend, I'm sorry. I was too engrossed in your chanting just now and didn't hear you call me. Please forgive me. Benefactor Chu doesn't need to be so polite." To be able to make Benefactor Chu enter a state of selflessness, it can be seen that you have fate with our Buddhism. The eminent monk's Buddhist name was Shin Kong. Shin Kong smiled and looked at her, speaking neither quickly nor slowly. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she blushed with shame and hurriedly smiled. At this moment, she asked softly, "Tianyue, what's going on?" Just now, Her Majesty the Empress and Reverend were discussing Buddhism. Reverend asked a question that no one could answer, so Her Majesty Consort you recommended you. She said that you were very smart. Back then, Reverend Su Jian wanted you to shave your head and become a Buddhist monk, so you should definitely be able to answer this question. Yu Tianyue stared straight ahead, and only her lips moved. In a few short sentences, she quickly explained the reason. The corners of Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. Why was it that everywhere she went, there were people who wanted to set traps for her? She had to admit that wherever there were people, there would be Jianghu. This was especially true for these beauties of the imperial harem who were born as officials and nobles. Wherever they were, there would be a palace struggle. "Benefactor, are you ready?" Shin Kong asked with a smile. Chu Qingyan smiled insincerely. "Reverend, please ask." Chapter 1097. Shin Kong nodded and pointed behind him, then slowly said, "Almsgiver Chu, please take a look." Chu Qingyan raised her head and saw that the people around her were all looking at her like she was a joke. She calmed herself down and finally turned towards the direction Shin Kong was pointing at. A candle. At this moment, a gust of wind blew over and the candle flames swayed left and right. "Almsgiver Chu, do you think it's the wind or the candle flame that's moving? Shen Kong asked with a smile. This question. Chu Qingyan's ears twitched. She didn't hear wrongly, right? Wasn't this the same question she had seen in the reading comprehension questions she did in high school? She was wild with joy in her heart and tears streamed down her face. It was really a blind cat running into a dead mouse. No one was able to answer this question just now. It's normal if Miss Chu can't answer it. Jing Mingzhu's tone was as gentle as water, but there was a hint of mockery in her eyes. Meng Shishu looked up from the side. Is Miss Jing questioning Consort Yu's words? Jing Mingzhu was stunned. She almost forgot that Chu Qingyan was recommended by Consort Yu. She shouldn't have blurted out that sentence just now. She glared at Meng Shishu angrily. She clearly didn't mean it that way, but she misinterpreted it. She didn't know what Consort Yu would think of her if she heard this. And Meng Shishu actually used her to put pressure on Chu Qingyan. How infuriating! Jing Mingzhu tore at her handkerchief angrily. Chu Qingyan sneered in her heart. She didn't mind these two fighting amongst themselves, but she couldn't let it go when it involved her. She would deal with them later. She didn't pay attention to their words and thought for a moment before looking up and replying politely to Master Shen Kong. Master, Qingyan feels that the wind didn't move and the candle flame didn't move. It's our hearts that moved. It's because our hearts moved that we felt the scenery in front of us move. Master Shen Kong's smiling eyes brightened when he heard this. Then, he laughed out loud, Almsgiver Chu is indeed fated with our dharma. Our hearts have indeed been moved. Those who wanted to see Chu Qingyan make a fool of herself were surprised to hear her answer. Although Empress Liang didn't like Chu Qingyan, she was in a good mood because Chu Qingyan had made her proud and made Consort Yu's plan fail. It was rare for her to be satisfied with Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan felt the gazes from all directions. She smiled faintly and accepted it calmly. She wanted to set a trap for her and laugh at her. No way. Consort Yu wanted to see her make a fool of herself, but she didn't expect Chu Qingyan to be able to resolve it. She frowned and regained her composure. She smiled faintly as if everything had nothing to do with her. At this moment, Master Shen Kong continued the topic from before. Humans usually have hearts move according to their state. This means that they are easily disturbed by the outside world. However, Dharma emphasizes on hearts move according to their state. This means that they don't feel sad or happy because of the outside world. They use a normal heart to face the joys and sorrows of the world, birth, old age, sickness, and death. They don't force things, don't compare themselves, don't bother about gains and losses, and be a person who doesn't care about worldly affairs. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that Master Shen Kong was no longer paying attention to her and knew that she had successfully passed. However, she still couldn't be careless and had to be vigilant. Who knew if these people would take advantage of her inattention and dig a hole for her again? At this moment, someone lightly tugged at the corner of her clothes. She turned around and saw Yu Tianyue with a face full of admiration. Big Sister Chu, you're simply too amazing. Is there anything that you don't understand? Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes. I think it's just blind luck. Don't move around. Otherwise, you'll be called out later. Yu Tianyue immediately sat upright and still, looking straight ahead. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. When she retracted her gaze, she saw Qi Lingyi beside Yu Tianyue. She saw her smiling slightly at her. Chu Qingyan also returned a smile and then listened seriously to the lecture. At this moment, Qi Lingyi only saw Chu Qingyan's side profile. Although she couldn't see her entire face, just this side profile alone was enough to make men infatuated and women feel inferior. This kind of talented and beautiful woman, how could she ever hope to reach the heights that she had reached? She felt extremely lonely and was absent-minded as she listened to the lecture. At this moment, the person lying on the tall tree facing the main hall's window was leisurely looking at the people in the hall. To be more accurate, he was only paying attention to Chu Qingyan. Higashio Motetsu admired the way she had to seriously listen to the lecture even though she was bored to death. It was rare to see her like this. When he returned, he had to properly laugh at her. However, he placed his elbow on the tree trunk and rested his chin on his palm. His gaze became deep. This little girl was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. He had seen countless people over the years, but he had rarely seen a girl who had the agility of a fairy, the charm of 100 flowers, and the tenacity of pine and cypress. He couldn't help raising the corners of his eyes. This kind of little girl, when those people in power saw her strength, they would probably regret betrothing her to Xiao Su. Seeing her pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger, it was very interesting. Halfway through his smile, he suddenly stopped smiling. But in the near future, he and her would have to face each other with swords. He raised his head and faced the sunlight through the gaps in the leaves. Finally, he raised his hand and slowly covered his eyes. After the morning lecture, it was time for breakfast. Everyone returned to their own rooms to eat. Chu Qingyan stood up and stretched. Just as she was about to leave, she saw Master Shinkong walking towards her slowly. She immediately stopped what she was doing and clasped her hands together in greeting. Master. Benefactor Chu doesn't need to be so polite. Master Shinkong smiled very amiably. This poor monk doesn't have any other matters. This poor monk just feels that Benefactor Chu is someone who has fate with Buddhism, so this poor monk wants to speak with Benefactor Chu. Will this cause Benefactor any trouble? No, it is Qingyan's honor to be able to receive Master's good graces. Chu Qingyan was a bit flattered. Even though she didn't understand why the master was looking for her, she still hurriedly replied. Benefactor Chu, you don't need to be nervous. Please follow this poor monk. Master Shinkong nodded with a slight smile and then gestured to the side. Chu Qingyan nodded and followed him with Jasper towards the bamboo forest in the courtyard. This poor monk has recently been pondering over the words cause and effect cycle. Does Benefactor Chu have any thoughts on this? Cause and effect cycle. Chu Qingyan quietly thought for a moment and then said uncertainly, Qingyan hasn't studied much about Buddhism. If I have any opinions, I'm afraid that Master won't be interested. Benefactor Chu can speak freely. Buddhism has no limits. Master Shinkong said. Chu Qingyan nodded. In Qingyan's opinion, the cause and effect cycle is just a cycle of kindness and resentment, grievance and enmity. Good karma begets good karma. What you give to life, life will give back to you. It's like the effect of force is mutual. Perhaps you won't be able to receive a response immediately, but over time, it will appear in front of you in any way. Master Shinkong glanced at her and nodded. Chapter 1098. Master Shinkong brought her to a stone table and invited her to sit down. Benefactor Chu's point of view is very unique, but it is still similar to the karma of the 3 lives that we talk about in Buddhism. Past death, present life and future life are all due to the 6 paths of reincarnation. After the 2 of them sat down, he said with a smile. Qingyan is just saying whatever comes to mind. I've embarrassed myself in front of Master. In front of an eminent monk, especially such a benevolent-looking old man, Chu Qingyan's tone was respectful. Benefactor Chu is too polite. This poor monk heard that you came to the capital 5 years ago. Now that you've returned, what are your thoughts? This question made her feel a little confused, but when she met Master Shinkong's kind gaze, she did not feel any malice. On the contrary, it was as if she saw benevolence and pity in his puffy eyes. Her heart stirred. When I first came to the capital 5 years ago, I was very fearful. I was filled with apprehension towards the unknown people and things. Now that I've returned, my attitude is completely different from before. Perhaps it's because I have something to rely on or my own ability is enough to have a place here, but, Chu Qingyan looked at the master with a helpless expression. I feel that I don't belong in this kind of place where power is concentrated. This place is like a cage. Those who don't want to fight, those who don't want to pay attention to, will all have an invisible hand pushing them from behind. Master, how do you think we should escape from this kind of situation? Master Shinkong nodded, his voice aged but not lacking in sincerity. Many things are predestined. Before Benefactor Chu appeared, the heavens had already arranged it. Your appearance has broken some balance. Just like what Benefactor Chu said just now, perhaps you won't get a response immediately, but as time passes, it will appear in front of you in any way. So running away is not a solution. Let nature take its course. When the conditions are right, success will come naturally. When Chu Qingyan heard his words, she felt as though she had been enlightened. But between the lines of his words, she seemed to smell something. Could it be that because of her appearance, some order was affected and the balance was tilted, causing some things to change? She suddenly recalled what Su Jian had said to her and asked anxiously, "Master, do you have any advice for Qingyan?" Master Shinkong fiddled with the Buddha beads in his hand and faintly smiled. Benefactor is a wise and enlightened person. There is no need for this poor monk to guide you. As long as you follow your heart and have kindness in your heart, you will be able to obtain kindness. At this time, Master Shinkong had already left the courtyard and was walking in the forest. The monk following beside him asked puzzledly, "Martial uncle, is there anything special about that almsgiver Chu? Why do you want to personally guide her? And can she understand what you're saying?" "Regardless of whether I understand it or not, I have already fulfilled my duty. As for the reason, the secrets of heaven cannot be revealed." Master Shinkong closed his eyes and chanted Amitabha. After Master Shinkong left, Chu Qingyan still sat in the same place, concentrating on the meaning of what he said just now. What did it mean to follow one's heart? What did it mean to seek benevolence and obtain benevolence only by harboring benevolence in one's heart? She seemed to have touched upon some clues, but when she thought deeper, it seemed like she did not understand anything. She could not help but feel a little depressed. Suddenly, the wind blew the leaves and the cool breeze carried away the scorching heat in the air. Right after, it was accompanied by the faint fragrance of lotus flowers. She raised her eyebrows slightly. This scent seemed a little familiar. The rustling of the leaves was like playing a clear and melodious tune. Hearing it was very soothing to the ears. She seemed to have sensed something and raised her eyes to look at the bamboo forest on her right. A slender and straight figure was slowly walking over under the cover of the bamboo leaves. Every step seemed to be stepping on a lotus flower. Every step gave birth to a lotus flower, the fragrance of the lotus lingered. With white as the background, the stripes crisscrossed. His plain clothes set off his indifferent brows and eyes, like a walking clear jade. However, his eyes carried neither joy nor sorrow, as if there was nothing in the world that could move his emotions and disturb his heart. Chu Qingyan slowly curved her eyes, the joy of reunion rippling in her heart. "It's been many years since we last met. How have you been?" The white-clothed monk stood not too far away from her. His eyes were like a painting and the corners of his mouth lifted. "Benefactor Chu, this poor monk greets you." Chu Qingyan chuckled. "We haven't seen each other for so long, so why are you still so polite? We've experienced many things together and can be considered acquaintances. Looking at you, you still treat me as an ordinary believer." Su Jian smiled faintly, a little surprised. "That's true. But why is Benefactor Chu here?" "It's like this. The Empress wants to pray for rain for the common people, so we came with her to Hugua Temple. This matter has caused such a big commotion, but you didn't know?" Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Su Jian understood. "These matters are all handled by Martial Uncle Abbot and the others. I usually don't care about these things." "That's a pity. I've heard that many women came here for you." She spread her hands, expressing regret. Su Jian frowned. "Benefactor Chu, you can't joke about this. What I'm saying is that they came here to preach scriptures to you. You're thinking too much, aren't you?" Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and chuckled. Su Jian was helpless against her mischievous nature. "Back to the topic. You did me a big favor in Jiang Kingdom last time, and I haven't thanked you properly. After this prayer is over, how about I treat you to a meal?" Chu Qingyan straightened her back and invited him sincerely. Only then did Su Jian remember what she was referring to. He said nonchalantly, "You don't have to be so polite." Back then, this penniless monk only did a small favor. His Royal Highness was not destined to die. To you, it was a small favor, but to us, it was a favor as heavy as a mountain. You can't refuse this gratitude. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest in peace for the rest of my life. Aren't you Buddhist disciples all merciful? Can't you bear to let me remember this for the rest of my life without relief? Chu Qingyan was very distressed and looked at him anxiously. Su Jian couldn't find a reason to refute her twisted logic, so he couldn't help but admire her eloquence once again. Since that's the case, this penniless monk will accept deferentially, but, before he could finish speaking, she interrupted him. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and said, "I know. I don't touch meat or drink alcohol. Don't worry, it's not like I don't know your strict rules. I guarantee that you'll only have vegetarian dishes and good tea." Su Jian smiled faintly when he heard this. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes and said to him, "Sit, sit, sit. We haven't chatted in a long time." Su Jian glanced at her suspiciously. In the past, whenever he saw her, he wanted to say more to her, but she would be impatient, as if he was trying to mislead her with his lies. Now that she took the initiative to invite him, he smelled something unusual. However, he didn't mind it too much. He sat down and looked at her with clear eyes. "Almsgiver Chu, if there's anything you want to ask, feel free to ask." She didn't expect him to see through her thoughts. Since he was going straight to the point, she wouldn't beat around the bush. "Su Jian, did you appear in Jiang Kingdom back then because of official business or because you predicted that we would be in danger?" Chapter 1099. As soon as Chu Qingyan said this, Su Jian couldn't help but stare at her. What does almsgiver Chu want to ask? This person actually knew how to avoid her words. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Since they were both smart people, she would just get straight to the point. "I want to know if you can really predict a person's fate." Su Jian smiled faintly. "I can predict fortune and disaster, but it's very shallow. I can't predict everything accurately." Chu Qingyan shook her head. "That's not necessarily the case. Since you can appear in the Jiang Kingdom, it means that you're very confident in your divination. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come all the way from Sichuan to the Jiang Kingdom." Su Jian raised his eyebrows. He wanted to say something, but she interrupted him again. "Don't say that it's all a coincidence. In the past, many emperors from other countries invited you, but you rejected them all. However, you agreed to come to the Jiang Kingdom. Don't tell me that it's fate. I don't believe it." Chu Qingyan propped her chin up with both hands. She looked like she was saying that his explanation was just an excuse. Su Jian chuckled and shook his head. She had actually guessed what he wanted to say. "Almsgiver Chu, you're really smart." Chu Qingyan shrugged. "Many people praise me for being smart, but most of them want to harm me or kill me. Which category do you belong to?" This penniless monk doesn't belong to anything. Su Jian was stunned by the frankness in her words. He sighed and was somewhat puzzled. She didn't beat around the bush and looked at him seriously. "Su Jian, you monks don't lie. Since that's the case, tell me. Back then, you said that my appearance affected the King of England's fate. To what extent will it affect his fate? Will it be beneficial or harmful? What kind of waves will his life be in the future? And what kind of fate will I have?" If she was in the modern world, she wouldn't be able to ask such a question. However, after everything that had happened, she suddenly felt a sense of awe towards the invisible hand of fate. As long as it was related to the ice cube, she would rather believe it was true. Because she was too eager, her questions came one after another. Su Jian slowly put away the smile on his face and looked at her expressionlessly. "Almsgiver Chu, the future is unpredictable. If this penniless monk tells you, it will change the trajectory of its development. Then, even if you know, it will be the same as not knowing. Since that was the case, why did he have to insist? He might as well let nature take its course. Do you agree with what this penniless monk said? Chu Qingyan snorted, that's all nonsense. It seems that you usually use such arguments to fool the masses. Su Jian's emotions did not fluctuate because of her words. He was still as calm as ever. No matter what almsgiver thinks, this penniless monk can only stop here. All right, I'll change the topic. Chu Qingyan sighed deeply. Negotiating with such a stubborn person was asking for trouble. She sorted out her emotions and asked seriously. Do you still remember that when we first met 5 years ago, you wanted me to join Buddhism? I want to know the real reason. Other than you knowing my identity, what other important factors are there? Otherwise, with your identity as an enlightened monk, you wouldn't casually want to take in a disciple just because you saw someone on the street. This matter is related to me. I don't want you to use some heavenly secret that can't be revealed to fool me again. She had guessed what he wanted to say. Su Jian lowered his head in thought, unable to give her an answer for the time being. He could not tell her that there were several reasons why he wanted to take her in as a disciple. Some were related to the world, some were related to her, and some were related to himself. Seeing him like this, she knew that it would not be easy to pry open his mouth. She was secretly anxious. Got it. Didn't these people claim to be benevolent? Then she could make good use of them. Thus, she secretly reached out and pinched her thigh hard. Tears welled up in her eyes like a tide. She looked at him with teary eyes. Su Jian, tell me, is it because I'm a scourge? Is that why you want to take me in and take good care of me? Su Jian heard her crying and raised his head in surprise. What he saw was her tear-stained face. He was used to her calmness and stubbornness. When he suddenly saw her crying like a weak girl, he was more shocked than suspicious. It's not as serious as you say. You're not a scourge. Not so serious. Not a scourge. Didn't that mean she was a scourge? She sobbed and whimpered, then why? Could it be that I don't have long to live and it's not easy to survive in this world, so you want to borrow the light of Buddhism to save my life? That's not entirely true. Su Jian was at a loss for what to do with her appearance. Chu Qingyan secretly twitched her mouth. No way, she was a short-lived ghost. She suddenly did not want to ask any more questions. Otherwise, she was a short-lived scourge, a femme fatale. Su Jian saw the tears hanging from her eyelashes and her expression changing unpredictably. He was a little puzzled. Almsgiver Chu, are you all right? Chu Qingyan immediately started wailing again. So you're saying that there's no hope for me? That I'm going to die soon? Jasper, who was standing guard not far away, could not help but avert her gaze at the sound of her crying. Master, your crying is too realistic. Su Jian panicked when he heard this. Although he had walked the world for so many years and had seen many people of all ages cry, none of them made him feel uneasy. You can't say that. Although in the beginning, this penniless monk calculated that you would not live past the age of 10, after you left the capital, your fate changed. At least, the great calamity of your life has been resolved. That year, she should have returned to her original place, but Xiao Su had blocked an arrow for her, resolving her life and death situation. Tracing back to the past, Xiao Su had been wrongly imprisoned. It was she who had resolved his crisis and pulled him back from the gates of hell. Therefore, when the two of them were supposed to die, they managed to turn the situation around. Their fates had already exceeded the scope of his divination. At this moment, even his master or martial uncle couldn't divine what kind of fate these two people would have in the future. However, no matter what happened in the future, their fates were tied together and could not be separated. With this answer, Chu Qingyan finally felt relieved. Fortunately, she was not a beauty with an unlucky life. Otherwise, her life would have been in vain. However, she still had one more worry. Thank you for answering my question. Her tears glistened as she expressed her sincere gratitude. But all this time, I've been worried about something and I'm begging you to help me. Su Jian looked troubled, but seeing her pitiful look, he sighed softly and said, "Ask away." "When I came here, I wasn't prepared and no one told me how long I would be here. Can you tell me if I will suddenly leave?" No one could understand what she was saying except for Su Jian, who was present. For the past 5 years, she had been trembling in fear and unease. She was afraid that she would suddenly return to the modern world as if she had suddenly transmigrated here. This kind of worry and pain was indescribable. She did not have the heart to tell Big Eyes for fear of adding to his worries. She could only bear it silently. Chapter 1100. At this moment, seeing Su Jian reminded her of what had happened before. It was as if she had grasped at a life-saving straw, and she desperately wanted to know the answer. Su Jian looked at her anxious and worried expression and gently shook his head. "It's not that this penniless monk is holding back from you, but this penniless monk can no longer predict your future. Perhaps my ability is too shallow." Master had once told him that just like how a doctor couldn't treat himself, he couldn't divine his own fortune either. This also confirmed Master's words, she was his calamity. However, he didn't understand what kind of calamity she would bring upon him. Yet, Master hadn't revealed anything from the beginning to the end. This made him very confused. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. "Even you, the Sichuan's most powerful charlatan, oh no, a slip of the tongue, the most powerful senior monk, can't divine my future. Then I don't think anyone else in this world has the ability to do so." Su Jian looked at her. "Didn't you say before that your fate is up to you and not the heavens? Since that's the case, why are you still clinging to your fate?" Chu Qingyan's body stiffened. This guy really knew how to draw inferences from one instance. "Ahem, all right. You're right. I really shouldn't be clinging to my fate. Anyway, I'll deal with whatever comes my way. There's nothing to be afraid of. At most, I'll be a good man again in 20 years. Su Jian saw that she had quickly wiped away her tears and returned to her peach blossom cheeks. He couldn't help but agree with the saying that a woman could change her face faster than the weather. "All right, since that's the case, I won't disturb you any further. Anyway, we're in the same temple, so it won't be difficult to meet each other." After settling her business, she felt that her stomach was empty. It was time to eat. This penniless monk will be in the temple these days. If there's anything you need, you can send someone to inform me. "All right." Su Jian watched as she stood up and waved at him in midair. Then, he called his maidservant and leisurely turned to leave. He smiled softly, then looked perplexed. What exactly did his calamity represent? Jasper followed behind her with a puzzled expression. "Mistress, who is this master?" "This person is called Su Jian. He is an eminent monk who became famous at a young age. I heard that when he was born, there was a flash of Buddha's light. He was very smart from a young age and could understand the Dharma with just a hint." This made many eminent monks sigh with admiration. Thus, he entered Buddhism at a young age. As he grew older, his pure, handsome, and abstinent appearance like a lotus flower was greatly sought after by many married and unmarried women. He could be said to exist in the hearts of the Sichuan people, like a god of Buddhism. This was the investigation she had done on him previously. Who asked him to keep persuading her to enter Buddhism? However, after knowing his background, she couldn't help but admire such a powerful person. So it's him. Although this subordinate has always been in Jiangnan, I've still heard of his name. Even the kings of other countries treat him with respect. His status is not to be underestimated. Jasper thought of the information she had collected in the past and nodded. Chu Qingyan blinked. Looking at Su Jian's dull appearance, she really didn't know why everyone respected him so much. "I can see that he is indeed very popular. This might have something to do with the people's belief in God." Jasper nodded, but she looked puzzled. Then why did Mistress take the initiative to get close to Master Su Jian? This wasn't Mistress's style. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and said frankly, "Su Jian helped me and Her Highness before. We owe him a debt of gratitude, so I wanted to make friends with him. However, there is another important reason, and that is that he has the ability to predict the future. This is a cheat. Perhaps he can be of help in the future. This subordinate understands. Jasper nodded. From afar, she saw Xining looking around. When she saw them, she immediately ran over. Mistress, this servant has finally found you. Chu Qingyan smiled. How was your date with your family's Jean Xian? Xining glared at her innocently. You're making fun of us. No, it's something serious. Mistress, Her Majesty the Empress is looking for you. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows slightly. Why was Empress Liang looking for her at this time? However, she hadn't been able to find a chance to show her face in front of the Empress. When the time came, she would have a chance to mention her parents. Alright, let's go. After walking around for a while, Chu Qingyan finally arrived at the courtyard where Empress Liang was staying. Before she even stepped in, she could already hear a woman's laughter. She paused in her steps and listened intently. It seemed like there were quite a lot of people here. This was probably going to be a tough battle. She stretched her muscles and tidied up her makeup, then walked towards the door. Under the scorching heat, on the road where there were few people, a horse carriage was moving forward. It was surrounded by tall men riding on horses. They were constantly watching their surroundings and were very cautious. Inside the horse carriage, a young woman was lying on the cushion in a very uncomfortable position. Beside her, sat a handsome and gentle man. He was holding a cup of tea in his hand and was calmly sipping it. Although the horse carriage wasn't slow, it didn't feel any bumps. It was as if it was on flat ground. The young woman who was quietly sleeping finally groaned because her position was not right. She slowly opened her eyes. What entered her eyes was a black lump. She blinked, and when her vision cleared, she was shocked to find that it was a pair of men's boots. She immediately jumped up, but because she hadn't moved for an entire night, her body was stiff. Before she could react, her bones and tendons made a bang-bang sound. She froze in midair and then fell towards the wall of the carriage. Her entire body was in a very comical position as she intimately touched the wall of the carriage. This fall was really painful. While she was mourning her chin, she heard a low mocking laugh. Only then did she react. There was still a culprit sitting in the carriage, so she immediately entered a state of high alert. She turned her head and saw Xiao Ho dressed in a refined moon-white brocade robe, looking like a young master from a noble family. In contrast, her wrinkled clothes looked like they had been soaked in salted vegetables for an entire night. Her aura immediately decreased by a bit. He really was a hypocrite who pretended to be human. She stuck out her chest. She definitely couldn't let her aura lose even a bit. You're going too far. Letting a delicate girl lie on the ground while you're enjoying yourself, you don't have any gentlemanly manners at all. In any case, I'm still your partner. Can't you have a bit of cooperation? Xiao Ho's attention shifted from the tea to the girl who called herself delicate in front of him. He turned his hand and placed the teacup on the table, looking very serious. Forgive this king's poor eyesight, but I can't see how the princess is delicate. Moreover, the princess is sleeping on the ground because of your poor sleeping posture, so you can't blame anyone else. Although we are in a cooperative relationship, the power is still in this king's hands. The princess can only cooperate. You. For a girl, this kind of naked exposure was even more embarrassing than calling a girl fat. Pang Zhijing was so angry that she didn't know what to say. However, the other party did not let her go. He said with some difficulty, moreover, this king is still a patient. Shouldn't he treat himself better? Pang Zhijing felt her blood boil. Chapter 1101. Pang Zhijing had to admit that talking to someone with a high IQ was just asking for humiliation. She decided not to bother with him anymore. Thus, she crossed her arms and sat on the other side of the couch, looking like she would never interact with him again. Xiao Ho did not have much interest in her, but he felt that the journey was boring, so he played with the kitten that was sent to him to relieve his boredom. Seeing that she was no longer making a fuss, he treated her as if she was invisible. But this situation did not last long. Grumble grumble, Peng Zhijing could not help but press her stomach. She had not eaten for 3 or 4 meals, so it would be strange if she was not hungry. It was too difficult to not hear this sound in this quiet carriage. Xiao Ho glanced at her, and Peng Zhijing exploded, thinking that he was looking down on her. Have you never seen a hungry person before? But that's right, royal marquises like you, who live like princes, will not feel this. Xiao Ho heard this and his eyes flashed, as if some unknown emotion floated and then sank. Peng Zhijing thought that she had seen wrongly, but then she saw him looking at her suspiciously. You speak as if you were not born in the palace. Princess, you haven't forgotten your identity, have you? Peng Zhijing was slightly stunned. She had let it slip, so she had to quickly cover it up. Of course I haven't forgotten my identity, but do you think that people who are glamorous on the surface are really living well? Everyone wants to squeeze into the palace, but is that a good place? Ha, it is simply a devil that eats people without spitting out the bones. Golden cages, volcanoes. Let's not talk about it, the feeling of being hungry and bullied in there, you will not understand. As she spoke, she could not help but put in her true feelings, because the original memories in her body kept surging up. Actually, this original body was also a person with a bitter life. Seeing the redness in her eyes, Xiao Ho was silent for a while, and his expression was slightly restrained, no longer as gentle and amiable as before. There was an incomprehensible dark sadness. You are not me, how do you know that I don't understand? His voice was slightly stern, which made Peng Zhijing jump in fright. But after hearing his words clearly, she could not help but mutter in her heart, what did this person mean? However, before she could think about it, the person in front of her ordered, bring up the princess's food. She didn't hear any response from outside, but she could clearly feel that the carriage had slowed down. After a while, someone lifted the curtain and handed over a lunchbox. Peng Zhijing immediately took it. She had already prepared herself for a simple meal, but when she opened it and saw the exquisite dishes inside, her eyes lit up. She couldn't wait to pick up her chopsticks and enjoy it. At this time, Peng Zhijing's mind was filled with the food in front of her. Xiao Ho, who was left to the side, looked at her wolfing down the food and raised his eyebrows slightly. This was the first time he saw a woman who didn't care about her image. If Peng Zhijing heard his ridicule, she would probably beat her chest and stomp her feet. Ever since she became this unlucky princess, she hadn't eaten a full meal. The reason was very simple. Peng Huang was afraid that she would have the strength to escape, so he specially controlled her food. In addition, she was always in a state of fear and planning to escape, so she didn't have the appetite to eat and drink. But now that she reached a consensus with Xiao Ho, she was finally relieved, so her appetite was greatly stimulated. After being hungry for several days, her stomach finally had a full meal. When she was half full, Peng Zhijing also realized that her table manners were a little frightening. She couldn't help but sneak a glance at the person beside her, only to see him calmly sipping his tea and admiring her table manners. However, he didn't laugh at her because of this. Peng Zhijing pursed her lips. Whatever, nothing was more important than eating. Xiao Ho sat quietly for a moment and suddenly said, I feel that you don't look like a princess. Her heart thumped, but she didn't show it on her face. She said in a bad mood, does everyone's identity have to be written on their face and expressed through their actions? I think you don't look like a lord. Besides, if I'm not a princess, will you let me go? When she said the last sentence, there was a faint expectation in her tone. Xiao Ho smiled faintly and said, we just need a princess. As for who she is, it's not within our scope of concern. These words are so heartless. She snorted softly, then seemed to have thought of something, Xiao Ho, if I complete my mission, you can't go back on your words and let me go. Xiao Ho smiled, of course, but where do you want to go? At this moment, she swallowed the last mouthful of rice. Hearing that, she looked up with a smile in her eyes. You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, as long as I'm not restrained, even if I'm standing in front of you, I'll be free. The person in front of him had rice on the corner of her mouth, but she was smiling brightly. Her little face seemed to be glowing, making people unable to look straight at her. Xiao Ho was silent. Freedom. It seemed that when he was very young, he had fantasized about it. Hello. Suddenly, there was an extra hand shaking in front of his eyes. He frowned and stepped back, looking at her with displeasure. What's the matter? Peng Zhijing was shocked by his reaction. I just saw that your face didn't look too good, so I approached you to show some concern. My good intentions really don't have good karma. She was about to step back when the carriage suddenly stopped. Her body couldn't help but lean forward, falling into his arms. She was stunned, and the smell of medicine hit her. He stiffened, the soft jade in his arms. And at this moment, before the two of them could react, they heard the sound of weapons clashing outside. In the King of England's residence. Hong Yi looked at the people going in and out of the kitchen from afar. She lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment. Touching the things in her sleeves, a light flashed in her eyes and she walked into the kitchen unhurriedly. Entering the kitchen, many servant girls bowed to her, and she nodded to them one by one. She walked into the inner room and saw Huang Yi standing by the stove looking at the fire. She smiled and walked up. So you're here. You made me look for you. Huang Yi saw her and smiled. I'm making soup. What are you looking for me for? Nothing much. Hasn't the weather been getting hotter recently? Old Madame Li wanted to ask if you needed some ice to make some desserts. She couldn't find you, so I came to find you to pass on a message for her. All right, I'll go find her later. Huang Yi gave her thanks. What soup are you making? It's strangely fragrant. Hong Yi asked curiously. Chicken soup. Little Princess Consort told me to make some nourishing soup for His Highness before she left. I saw that His Highness didn't eat much this morning, so I thought of making some. Huang Yi said with a smile. Hong Yi praised, not bad, not bad. No wonder little Princess Consort likes you so much. At this time, someone called her from outside. Huang Yi hesitated. Hong Yi pushed her, go take a look. I'll watch for you for a while. Come back early. Huang Yi smiled gratefully and went out. When Hong Yi saw that Huang Yi had left, she looked around and saw that there was no one around. She took out a small medicine bag from her sleeve and quickly picked up the lid. She sprinkled the medicine inside and then quickly covered it again. Chapter 1102. Not long after she closed the lid, Huang Yi came back. What did I call you for? Hong Yi pretended not to know and asked. Nothing, it's just that the ingredients for today's cooking have arrived, so I went to check. Huang Yi waved her hand, then leaned over to look at the pot, then sat back down to add more firewood. Hong Yi nodded. At this time, a few more cooking maids came in, so she found an excuse to leave. When she came out of the kitchen, Hong Yi looked through the window and saw Huang Yi being entangled by those maids. She gave a low laugh, then left as if nothing had happened. Hugua Temple. At this time, a palace maid loudly announced, Miss Chu has arrived. The people inside had been waiting for her for a long time. When they heard this, everyone looked at the door in unison. A figure appeared. She was dressed in a thin scarlet robe with a Chinese rose embroidered on her collar. A belt of the same color was tied around her waist. She was dressed very elegantly and simply. However, in such a hot summer day, she gave off a very refreshing feeling. Moreover, she didn't seem to have any makeup on her face. She looked very natural, which made many of the women present endlessly envious. Qing Yan greets Your Imperial Highness the Empress. Chu Qingyan walked to the center of the room and gracefully bowed to Empress Liang. Empress Liang indifferently raised her hand, rise, Luo Yun, take a seat. Chu Qingyan did not expect this future mother-in-law who did not like her to give her a good look, so she happily found a seat at the back and sat down. However, sitting at the back did not mean that it would not attract attention. Your Imperial Highness, this Miss Chu is very beautiful, one in 100 great beauties. She and His Royal Highness are a perfect match. The wife of the Minister of Revenue, Madame Tang, said with a smile. Chu Qingyan heard this and couldn't help but look at her. She was wearing an emerald green dress, with a round figure and a round face. She looked very rich and peaceful, which made Chu Qingyan have a good impression of her. Who didn't like to hear good words? Empress Liang heard Madame Tang's praise and smiled. Madame Tang, don't praise her, otherwise this girl Qingyan's tail will rise to the sky. Chu Qingyan cooperated with a shy smile, and the other madams saw this and covered their mouths to laugh. On the side, Meng Shushu saw her appearance and felt jealous. The Liang sisters beside Empress Liang looked at each other, but did not say anything. However, from the moment she entered, Chu Qingyan still had not figured out why they were sitting here and chatting. Could it be the tea party after breakfast? At this time, a young girl sitting beside Madame Tang seemed to have been holding back for a long time. When no one spoke, she couldn't help but ask, Big Sister Chu, I met little sister Tianyue today. I saw that her makeup was very beautiful, and it didn't smudge even in this hot weather. After asking, I found out that you gave her some new products. I was very curious. Where did Big Sister Chu get those products from? Tell us about them and let us see. The young girl's face was like cream, and her voice was sweet and sweet. She was very charming and cute. Her expression was curious, and her eyes were as big as round jade. One could see the clarity in her eyes, which was pure curiosity and surprise. At this time, when the young girl finished speaking, everyone looked at her with curiosity. Chu Qingyan finally understood. So it was because of this. It seemed that the two models, Yu Tianyue, had played an unexpected role and attracted the attention of these rich madams. It was really like the saying, flowers don't bloom when you want to, but willows grow when you don't want them to. At this time, even Empress Liang looked at her and said, Qingyan, tell us. What products are you using? Why haven't we heard of them before? Chu Qingyan's mind lit up, and she did not hesitate. She turned around and said a few words to Jasper. Then, she stood up and said to everyone's expectant eyes. When Qingyan was in Liancheng, she saw people using these products and was very curious. After asking around, she found out that they were bought in Jiangnan. Then, she asked someone to buy them and tried them herself. She found that they were very effective. After explaining the reason, she began to explain the products in detail. When she talked about the effects of skin care, moisturizing, the eyes of the women present, whether it was Empress Liang, the Liang sisters, Meng Shushu, or the madams and young ladies who had seen the world, lit up. They couldn't wait to enjoy these products immediately. It sounds really good. It's the gospel for us women. Sometimes, on summer days like this, I don't even dare to wipe my sweat. I'm afraid that I'll accidentally become a dirty cat. Madame Jean, the minister of the Ministry of Works, sighed and was very distressed. Beside her, her daughter, Jean Yuqing, hugged her arm and shook it with a smile. Mother, don't worry. Didn't you hear what Sister Chu said? The boss of this continuation product is going to open a branch in the capital soon. When the time comes, I'll buy it for you. Madame Jean smiled and reached out to gently tap her younger daughter's nose. She laughed and said, Mother knows that you're filial. Chu Qingyan looked around and nodded in her heart. She had only talked about these skincare products, and they were already overjoyed. Wouldn't the makeup products she was going to talk about next make them go wild with joy? Sure enough, it was a woman's nature to love beauty. After everyone's heated discussion ended, Chu Qingyan continued to speak. In addition to these, they have many other products. For example, they can make people whiten their skin, cover the blemishes on their face, or make them look very good from the sun. As long as you use their products, even an extremely beautiful person will become extremely beautiful. Everyone was moved by her words. Some of them couldn't wait to own such products. Although Liang Danbing was also very tempted, she couldn't stand seeing Chu Qingyan receive everyone's attention. She couldn't help but mock, no matter how well you say it, it's still not as good as seeing it. What if it's not as good as you say? So Miss Chu, you'd better not be too full of yourself. Otherwise, you'll only be slapping your own mouth when the time comes. Although Liang Danbing's words were harsh, many people present expressed their agreement. It wasn't that they hadn't seen good things before. It was just that Liang Danbing's words were so miraculous that it felt like a fantasy story. However, there were some people who supported Chu Qingyan. The girl who first asked her about this topic, Tang Lanhan, said with a smile on her face, I think that big sister Chu isn't exaggerating. If everyone has seen Tianyue, they'll know that she's like a different person after using big sister Chu's products. Although they couldn't confirm Chu Qingyan's words at this time, everyone still had expectations. Chu Qingyan didn't pay much attention to Liang Danbing. She was just a small character. Let her jump around. The more you pay attention to her, the happier she jumps. She felt that it was about time to raise their curiosity to the highest level. From the corner of her eye, she saw Jasper coming in with a box. She couldn't help but smile brightly. It was time to witness a miracle. Chapter 1103. When the crowd saw Jasper enter, they all looked at the box in her hands. If they remembered correctly, this person was Chu Qingyan's personal maidservant. Jasper stood beside her master and said in a low voice, Master, I've brought the things. Chu Qingyan nodded, then turned to face the crowd. These are the products that I mentioned earlier. I know that many of you don't believe me, but it's okay. I can give you a demonstration on the spot. As she spoke, she opened the lid of the box in Jasper's hands. There were several layers inside, and beautiful bottles and jars were displayed on each layer. They were like small handicrafts that were very attractive. The crowd was attracted by the small bottles, and they all looked at them in disbelief. Because they were very different from what they usually used. Empress Liang, who was sitting at the head of the table, looked slightly surprised. She thought for a moment, then said to Chu Qingyan, Today, tell everyone how to use these things. Chu Qingyan bowed in response, then looked around at the crowd and said with a smile, Who wants to be a model? Although everyone was eager to give it a try, in a situation where they were not confident, everyone looked at each other, and no one dared to take a step forward. At this time, Tang Lanhan stood up and said straightforwardly, I'll do it. Chu Qingyan gave her a look of praise, Okay. Mama, please help Qingyan move a chair. Empress Liang nodded to Luo Yun, and Luo Yun immediately instructed the palace maids to do so. After Tang Lanhan sat down in the middle of the crowd, Chu Qingyan took out the makeup remover and said to her with a smile, Miss Tang, I have to remove the makeup on your face first. Otherwise, it will affect the effect of the next makeup. Tang Lanhan didn't care, I'll listen to you. You don't have to ask for my opinion. Hearing her words, Chu Qingyan's impression of this straightforward young lady improved. Her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. All right, since you trust me so much, I promise to give you a beautiful appearance. As she spoke, she poured the makeup remover onto a clean handkerchief and slowly wiped off the rouge on Tang Lanhan's face. Very quickly, a bare face appeared in front of everyone. Although there was no rouge on her face, her skin was still white and tender because of her youth. Chu Qingyan observed her face and realized that her eyes were not big enough. She had an idea of what was going on. She took a bottle of toner and patted it on Tang Lanhan's face while explaining to everyone, We've cleaned up our faces just now. Now, we're going to replenish the water we lost just now. It can also achieve the effect of shrinking the pores. Then, we're going to apply a layer of lotion to make our faces easier to put on makeup later. After applying the lotion, she continued to apply a layer of cream on Tang Lanhan's face. This is to nourish the skin. Because it's summer now, the sun is very strong. Sometimes, when we go out for a walk or two, our face and neck will become two different colors. So, we need to apply a layer of sunscreen next, which is to isolate the sun and dust so that our skin won't be polluted. Chu Qingyan explained every step to everyone, trying to translate the modern language into something they could understand. However, everyone was still stunned by these new words. Moreover, They found that every time she applied a layer of cream on Tang Lanhan's face, Tang Lanhan's skin would change. It became whiter and whiter, more and more delicate. They didn't dare to take a sip of tea and held their breaths, afraid that they would miss the details. What? Eyebrows can be drawn. Wow, it can actually change the color of lips. I thought it was only red usually. What's that? Just pinching her eyelashes and they become curled. Sighs and exclamations rang out one after another like curious babies. They couldn't help but stand up from their chairs and surround Chu Qingyan. They watched as Chu Qingyan turned Tang Lanhan into an exquisite and beautiful woman as if she was performing a magic trick. Even Empress Liang, who had always been prejudiced against Chu Qingyan, was shocked at the skillful makeup skills of a craftsman. When Chu Qingyan entered the final step, no one dared to disturb her. They watched quietly. In fact, they had already begun to roar in their hearts, regretting that they didn't take the initiative just now. Otherwise, they would be the one who turned into a fairy now. After Chu Qingyan was done with Tang Lanhan's makeup, she took the mirror from Jasper and placed it in front of her. She smiled and said, "Now you can look at your face." When she heard everyone exclaim in surprise, Tang Lanhan couldn't help but want to take a look. However, her good upbringing made her endure. Now that she finally saw the effect, she couldn't wait to open her eyes. When she saw the person in the mirror, her eyes widened in shock. She said in disbelief, Is the person in there really me?" Chu Qingyan was amused by her cute reaction and nodded seriously. At this moment, Mrs. Tang also surrounded her and was overjoyed. "Daughter, it's really you." Then she turned to praise Chu Qingyan sincerely. "Miss Chu, your hands are really skillful." As soon as Mrs. Tang finished speaking, the people who gathered around nodded in agreement. Chu Qingyan smiled modestly. "Actually, it's all thanks to these products. I'm just skillful with my hands. Miss Chu is too modest. Tell us, her eyes weren't big before, but why did they become so much bigger at first glance?" Jin Yueqing moved closer to Chu Qingyan and asked in amazement. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. Although she wasn't wearing a brocade dress, she gave off an air of elegance and calmness. She looked at the confused crowd and patiently explained. "It's also thanks to our products, but the most important thing is the skill of applying makeup. Although Miss Tang's eyes aren't big, we can make them brighter through products. For example, we can modify her eyebrows to make them longer. Then, we can use an eyelash clip to make her eyelashes curl. Then, when we apply powder to her cheeks, we can use a little trick to modify the shape of her face to make it look smaller. This way, her eyes will stand out." Chu Qingyan spoke frankly with assurance, making everyone gasp in amazement. "What else can be changed?" "Tell us all about it," Empress Liang said quickly. Chu Qingyan bowed and accepted the order again. "Actually, when we're born, most of us aren't perfect. For example, some people feel that their eyebrows are too short or too thick, their lips are too light, their nose isn't straight enough, and so on. These can all be changed through these products. Moreover, it doesn't change our original appearance. Instead, we can modify our appearance to show our best side in front of our husband, family, and friends." Chu Qingyan's words made the eyes of the women present light up. Chapter 1104. Also, with the passage of time, once we get older, our skin will become saggy and dark yellow. Wrinkles will appear at the corners of our eyes, showing signs of aging. It can protect our skin to a certain extent, moisturize, whiten, and change its luster. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she felt the wild joy of the crowd. She laughed in her heart and continued, "However, just using these products can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. Although it's because after removing the makeup, we still look the same as before, we also have to put in more effort in eating. In fact, there's a lot of nourishing the body and changing our mental appearance through eating." Many of the women present were already 30 or 40 years old. Not only did they have to serve their high-ranking husbands, but they also had to take care of all the big and small matters in the manor. It was very tiring. In addition, in ancient times, it was very common for men to have one wife and many concubines. Not only did the first wife have to fight for concubines, but she also had to guard against those servant girls with bad intentions. Time and energy were spent on this, so no matter how much powder was used, it couldn't hide the vicissitudes of life, unlike those vixens who were only responsible for looking beautiful like flowers. So after hearing Chu Qingyan's words, the thoughts of wanting to catch their husbands in the past came back in a whirlwind at this moment. Chu Qingyan felt the wolf-like gazes from all directions, and a few black lines slid down her forehead. However, she felt very happy in her heart because the effect was unexpectedly good. However, she still had a plan in her heart. These words of experience couldn't be said too much. She had to hold back some, so that she could be popular in the circle of noblewomen in the future. Do you have any good food therapy methods? Tell us about them. At this time, Meng Shushu was fascinated by the words and couldn't help but blurt out. After she finished speaking, she couldn't help but want to bite off her tongue. Chu Qingyan didn't pay attention to her. Instead, she took out some unopened products from the box and selectively gave them to the people around her. This, madam, the shape of your lips is very beautiful, but it's a little dry. Take this bottle of lip balm and try it. This young miss has thick eyebrows and big eyes, but the shape of your eyebrows can be slightly trimmed. Take this eyebrow shaver and try it. After walking around, basically everyone had received a product that was suitable for them. Even the Liang sisters and Meng Shushu had received a set. Everyone was overjoyed and wished they could go back and try it in front of the mirror right now. However, they had good manners and didn't forget to thank Chu Qingyan. Although they knew that gifts blind the eyes, they couldn't refuse such a rare product. At the same time, they flattered Empress Liang eagerly. With such a capable and intelligent future daughter-in-law, when they were almost done talking, they immediately left in a hurry. After leaving, Empress Liang still had a complacent smile on her face. After the room returned to silence, Empress Liang looked at Chu Qingyan, who was still standing in place, and asked with an unpleasant expression, "Why haven't you left yet?" "Nyang Nyang, Qingyan has a small gift that she wanted to give you, but she never found the right time. Now is the perfect time to give it to you." She smiled pleasingly. "What gift?" After seeing her amazing makeup skills, Empress Liang suddenly had a strong interest in what she wanted to give. Chu Qingyan smiled but didn't say anything. She turned around and took a box the size of 2 palms that Jasper handed over. She took 2 steps forward and placed it in front of Empress Liang. Empress Liang didn't have Luoyun take it. She glanced at Chu Qingyan and then personally reached out to open it. When the items inside were all reflected in her eyes, Empress Liang revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. This is... That's right. These are all the products that Qingyan used for Miss Tang's makeup earlier. There are also some products with different effects that haven't been used yet. None of them have been opened. Before coming to the temple, Qingyan had already carefully selected a set for you. Is it to Nyang Nyang's liking? She lowered her eyes and pretended to be very nervous. How could Empress Liang not like it? As soon as she saw Tang Lanhan's makeup, she wanted to immediately send someone back to the capital to buy some to try. At this time, Chu Qingyan's gift was like handing a pillow to a sleepy person or a delicious meal to a hungry person. What a good child. Empress Liang reached out to gently pat Chu Qingyan's hand. She revealed a rare amiable expression. She was used to Empress Liang's aloof appearance, so she suddenly became amiable to her. Moreover, she usually didn't have a kind expression. Even if she was a bit gentle, it looked strange. Chu Qingyan felt a bit scared, but she didn't show it on her face. These are all things that Qingyan should do. It's fine as long as Nyang Nyang likes it. If only Su had some of your filial piety. Empress Liang sighed softly, but her expression was somewhat sincere. Chu Qingyan hurriedly said, "Actually, His Highness is also very concerned about Nyang Nyang. It's just that men aren't as meticulous as women and don't easily express their feelings. Therefore, I ask that Nyang Nyang doesn't bicker with His Highness." When Empress Liang heard this, she felt much better. At this time, she saw that Empress Liang was unable to take her eyes off the bottles and jars. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. She felt that this was an opportunity and couldn't help but boldly say, "Nyang Nyang, Qingyan has something to thank you for." "What is it?" Empress Liang casually asked. "Qingyan and His Highness came to the capital and left my parents in a foreign land. I missed them very much. Later on, I heard that Nyang Nyang brought my parents to the capital." "Qingyan is very grateful," Chu Qingyan said carefully. Empress Liang's hand that was stroking the bottle paused. Emotions swirled in her eyes. It seemed that she had underestimated this girl. There's no need to be so polite. Once you marry into the family, your parents, must also treat them well. Chu Qingyan repeatedly agreed. Then, she gathered her courage and asked, "Then, Nyang Nyang, when my parents come to the capital, can they be brought to the King of England's residence?" Empress Liang sneered inwardly. She even learned to bargain with her. Her lips curved slightly, but she avoided the topic. "Didn't you put on Miss Tang's makeup earlier? Now that the products are all here, you should also try on this consort's makeup and see if it's as magical as it seems." When Empress Liang didn't respond, Chu Qingyan was a bit disappointed. However, she had no choice but to force herself to respond. "Alright, Qingyan will put on Nyang Nyang's makeup right now." She turned the box around and earnestly put on Empress Liang's makeup. Because she had observed Empress Liang's skin and facial features from the beginning, and because she was skilled, she quickly put on a makeup that suited Empress Liang very well. Not only did Empress Liang look graceful and luxurious, but she also looked a few years younger, like an unmarried young lady. Empress Liang was unwilling to let go of the mirror. Her fingers stroked her cheeks. It was as if she was looking at her budding self from 20 years ago. Seeing that she was no longer needed, Chu Qingyan packed up the box and prepared to leave. "Wait." Empress Liang put down the mirror and suddenly called out to her. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up slightly. Could it be that there was a chance of what happened just now? Chapter 1105. Does Your Highness have any other orders? Chu Qingyan suppressed her anticipation and asked with a normal expression. Empress Liang was still admiring her own reflection in the mirror. Her gaze didn't land on Chu Qingyan, but her words were clearly directed at her. "If you can teach the palace maid in charge of this consort's makeup techniques in the next few days, then this consort will fulfill your wish for the question you asked just now." Chu Qingyan revealed a happy smile, but she was afraid that it would be too obvious, so she tried her best to restrain herself. However, she still had some misgivings. For someone like Empress Liang who was used to ordering people around, she saw through her misgivings with a single glance. She said slowly, "You don't need to worry that this consort will play tricks. While you're at the state temple, you can come to this consort's place and spend 2 hours a day teaching her. When you leave, your parents will appear safely in the King of England's residence." Chu Qingyan immediately bowed her head in thanks. "Many thanks, Your Highness. You may withdraw." Empress Liang waved her hand. Afraid that Empress Liang would change her mind, Chu Qingyan immediately withdrew with Jasper. When they left, Empress Liang was still admiring her own beauty in the mirror. Once they left the courtyard, Chu Qingyan let out a huge sigh of relief. Then, her lips curled into a bright smile. "Jasper, I've finally rescued father and mother." "Congratulations, Master." Jasper also revealed a smile. "I'll go back and make a detailed outline for my lecture. When the time comes, I'll be able to deal with them." With the weight lifted from her heart, Chu Qingyan's words became much lighter. As she spoke, she walked towards her own courtyard. "Miss Chu, please wait." Just as she was about to take a step, she heard someone call out to her. Chu Qingyan stood still and turned to see Tang Lanhan standing under the shade of a tree. She recalled that if it weren't for Tang Lanhan's full cooperation in the room, she probably wouldn't have been so successful. She couldn't help but reveal a sincere smile. "So it's Miss Tang. You don't need to be so polite. Just call me by my name. I won't treat you as an outsider." How about I call you Qing Yan? Tang Lanhan walked in front of her with her maidservant and spoke in a pleasant voice. Although she was surprised by her straightforwardness, she admired this personality from the bottom of her heart, so she nodded. I like your personality, Lanhan. I like your personality too, Qing Yan, Tang Lanhan said without any pretense. After the two of them finished speaking, they looked at each other and laughed at the same time. This smile was like a stone slab that was connected to the feet of the two, allowing the two to become close friends in the days to come with a tacit understanding. The reason I waited here this time is to make friends with you. Anyway, there will be plenty of time in the future, and we will meet again. I can't be out for too long. Otherwise, my mother won't be able to find me and will leave first. Come and have tea with me when you're free. Tang Lanhan waved goodbye to her. Chu Qingyan looked at the person who came in a hurry and left in a hurry. She couldn't help but curve her lips. She really was a woman in a hurry. On the way back, Chu Qingyan received a lot of attention, but it wasn't as probing as before. Most of it was with kindness or eagerness to please her. She sighed in her heart. Sure enough, when you're with a woman, you still have to talk about makeup and skin care in order to stand firm. It seemed that she had to work harder in this area in the future. This was called when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But she didn't know that her actions today not only made people have a good impression of her, but also laid the foundation for Xiao Su's expansion of power in the future. After all, in this world, most of the masters of the harem more or less like to talk about pillow talk. At this time, in the carriage, Peng Zhijing threw herself into Xiao Ho's arms. She felt that although he looked thin and weak on the outside, he was actually very well endowed. Just as she was immersed in the man's charm, Xiao Ho had already shifted his attention from her to the outside world. The sound of a fierce battle could be heard through the window. Xiao Ho grabbed Peng Zhijing's collar, lifted her up and threw her to the side. His voice was tense as he asked, "What happened?" His voice fell and someone replied, "Lord, we've been attacked by unknown people." Peng Zhijing, who was rudely thrown aside, rubbed her dizzy head. When she heard this, she realized that her ears were filled with noisy roars. She subconsciously wanted to pull open the curtains to see what was going on. But just as she raised her hand, it was slapped down by Xiao Ho. The back of her hand was burning with pain. Peng Zhijing glared at him in dissatisfaction. Just as she was about to crusade against him, the person who was looking at her coldly from the sides suddenly pounced on her. Peng Zhijing was pressed so hard that her back was about to break. She slapped the person on top of her with both hands. "Get off, get off." Before she could finish her words, a long arrow pierced through the window and nailed to the side of her head. She was immediately silenced, her eyes unable to move. Xiao Ho didn't even look at her. He straightened up. At this time, the fighting outside had already stopped. He pulled open the curtains and walked down. Peng Zhijing, who was lying on the carriage, jumped up like a carp and quickly squeezed her way to Xiao Ho's side. What kind of joke is this? She almost lost her little life just now. She must follow this moving backer closely. Xiao Ho glanced at the person who was sticking close to him. His eyes were cold. Unfortunately, the other party would rather be threatened by his gaze than leave him for even half an inch. At this time, his subordinates escorted one of the surviving black-clothed men over. "Master, we captured one alive. The rest have all committed suicide." Peng Zhijing, who was focused on Xiao Ho just now, looked around. She saw many black-clothed men and guards lying haphazardly on the ground. Moreover, they seemed to have lost their breath. The ground was covered in blood. It was like a strong light that stung her eyes and went straight to the weakest part of her heart. She was stunned on the spot. Her body trembled uncontrollably, so much so that she didn't hear what Xiao Ho and the others were saying. After Xiao Ho asked clearly, he left some people to clean up the battlefield. When he turned around, he saw the pale and bloodless Peng Zhijing. He raised the corner of his eye. This kind of scene shouldn't be unfamiliar to you. Peng Zhijing turned her neck stiffly. Her lips moved and her voice was very soft. I am a law-abiding person. We live in a peaceful era, so we can't easily break the law. Injuring people will result in imprisonment, not to mention killing people. The ancient times are too scary, really too scary. I want to go home, she spoke with a lisp. Xiaohou didn't hear what she said at all. He also didn't have the patience to pay attention to her. Then you can stay here alone. Xiaohou turned around and got into the carriage. In this place, she only knew him. Seeing that he didn't care about her, her heart panicked. She immediately followed him into the carriage, afraid that he would lose her. Xiaohou saw her scared out of her wits and really couldn't understand. For example, at this moment, her hands were tightly clutching his sleeves. Princess, I'm afraid there's something that this prince needs to tell you. What is it? These assassins are coming for you. Chapter 1106. After drinking a bowl of iced plum soup, Pang Zhijing felt slightly more alive. She took a deep breath and asked, why do these people want to kill me? Is it because someone doesn't want me to enter your Sichuan imperial capital? So in the end, they're your opponents? Xiaohou raised his eyebrows. Seeing her holding the bowl with a frightened expression, he sneered, your safety has nothing to do with Sichuan. Then why? This person's tone was really repulsive, but she couldn't fall out with him now. Otherwise, those assassins would make a comeback and her little life would be in danger. He smiled faintly, but there was an unclear meaning in his smile, causing Pang Zhijing to become vigilant. Do you still remember this person, Yu Qingxi? Yu Qingxi. Suddenly, she felt a pain in her chest and couldn't help but reach out to press it. She frowned. She wasn't unfamiliar with this name. In her original body's memories, this person was someone she liked for 10 years. Just now, it should be her original body's reaction. Perhaps it was because she liked him too deeply that even hearing his name would cause her heart to ache. He's the Prime Minister's son, but what does this have to do with him? She was at a loss. You poisoned his fiancée in Southern Blue, and now you're not allowing him to take revenge? Xiaohou said indifferently. Her heart began to ache again. She could feel the original body's residual grief and despair. To be hated by the person she loved to the point that he only wanted her to die, this feeling must be very unbearable. But, didn't this happen 2 years ago? And the one who poisoned her wasn't her, but her original body. Could it be that after transmigrating, not only did she have to die for her original body, but she also had to shoulder the debt? Xiaohou disagreed. It's not strange at all that it's not too late for a gentleman to take revenge, even after 10 years. He plotted to kill you 2 years ago, but unfortunately, he didn't succeed because he didn't want the imperial family to find out. Now that you've left Southern Blue, it's a good opportunity. If you die, no one will be able to find out about it. What a ruthless person. She endured the pain in her heart and asked with a frown, wait, how do you know about this? Leave a captive and pry it out of his mouth. Xiaohou was a little puzzled. He had already received news about her a long time ago. But because he didn't think that there was a need to pay too much attention to her, he didn't pay much attention to it. But now, information about her surfaced in his mind. Because she wasn't favored since she was young, she had an extreme sense of inferiority, which led to her becoming arrogant and despotic. In order to achieve her goals, she would have done anything. She fell in love with the Prime Minister's son. In order to obtain him, she didn't hesitate to poison his fiancée. As a result, she was imprisoned in the cold palace by the Southern Blue King. Pang Zhijing rubbed her chest and sighed faintly. So that's how it is. But did you know that Pang Zhijing didn't poison her at all? She was framed. Xiaohou looked at her in confusion. Aren't you Pang Zhijing? Only then did she realize that she had spilled the beans. She immediately corrected herself. I was talking about myself. I didn't harm that Yu Qingxi's fiancé. I was wronged. Xiaohou lightly sneered. Do you think that anyone would believe a notorious person like you? The undisguised ridicule in his words made Pang Zhijing silent. Just when Xiao Ho thought that she wouldn't speak again, she hugged her knees and sat down. She lowered her eyebrows and laughed at herself. Yes, because I'm a bad person. I've done a lot of bad things, so once something bad happens, everyone can naturally place it on me. No matter if it's a scapegoat or a scapegoat, they don't need the truth. As long as they believe that the culprit is the culprit, then they can openly trample on that self-righteous criminal. She had never properly sorted out Pang Zhijing's life. At this moment, because of Xiao Ho's ridicule, scenes of the past appeared in front of her eyes. When she was 2 or 3 years old, Pang Zhijing was pushed to the ground and kicked and beaten by an older child. When she was a little more sensible, she fell in love with Yu Qingxi, but was mocked and ridiculed by him. She was even pushed into the lake by his fiancé. Later on, when she wanted to protect herself and not be bullied, she was repeatedly used by others and became a notorious poisonous woman. If she had to use 4 words to describe Pang Zhijing's life, it would be miserable. This was a girl that people couldn't help but pity. It was just that she reincarnated into the wrong body and entered a royal family that didn't suit her. Now that she had become her, she had to bring her out to enjoy the taste of freedom and no longer be bullied by others. The gloomy and sad words were like a gust of autumn wind that swept through Xiao Ho's heart like fallen leaves. They danced in his heart and disturbed his emotions. He looked at the girl with her head down with a bit of surprise. Because of her words, many memories of his youth appeared in his mind. If you don't want to be bullied by others, then make yourself so strong that no one can bully you. In the end, it's still because you're too weak. Xiao Ho frowned and said in a heavy and cold voice. Pang Zhijing looked up and fiercely looked at him, but she couldn't refute his words. Then what about you? Is it because of this that you want to preserve your strength and wait for an opportunity to attack? She asked. Xiao Ho chuckled and turned to look at her. You don't need to know so much. Right now, your thoughts should be on whether or not those assassins will make a comeback, and not trying to find out more about me. This king will kindly advise you that the more people know, the faster they will die. It was the first time she met such a person who could say such cruel and threatening words with a gentle smile. Pang Zhijing thought of her situation and couldn't help but worry. Will they come back? That's hard to say. If they insist on killing you, then there will be many people lying in ambush along the way. In fact, if the first attack didn't succeed, they wouldn't act rashly, because they would have already alerted the enemy. But in order to prevent her from causing him any more trouble, Xiao Ho lied through his teeth. Pang Zhijing swallowed and then moved closer to him. She grabbed his sleeve with her fingers and squeezed out 2 drops of tears. Well, Your Highness Prince Yi, for the sake of our cooperation, I hope you can protect me, your ally, well. Xiao Ho reached out and pulled her fingers away. He said faintly, of course, this prince will protect your highness. But it's inevitable that people will be negligent. If I don't protect you well, I hope your highness will be magnanimous enough to forgive me. Pang Zhijing cursed in her heart. This damned schemer. When she sat back down, a bottle was thrown on her lap. She picked it up and looked at him in confusion. At this moment, Xiao Ho had already picked up the book beside him and lowered his head to read. If you don't get good treatment for your foot, it's one thing to be lame. But if the killers attack again, you won't be able to escape. The cold medicine bottle in her hand slowly warmed up, just like her heart at this moment. She lowered her head and said softly, "Thank you." Her fingers paused as she flipped the page, but then she continued to flip. Chapter 1107. King of England's Palace. Hualing was sitting on a tree trunk, biting a grass branch in boredom. His ears twitched and the sound of something piercing through the air came from below. He reached out with his hand behind his back and something appeared in his palm. Taking it over to look, it was a tangerine. He lowered his head and saw Turin standing under the tree. He couldn't help but smile. "Thanks. You're so busy, yet you came here to slack off." Wood Spirit leaned against the tree trunk and looked up at him. "There's no other way." Master suddenly took out all the work that had piled up over the past few years to deal with. "My entire body is shaking right now and my legs are cramping. You have to let me catch my breath. Huo Ling complained. Ever since the little princess went to Hugua Temple, Master couldn't seem to be idle. He would find things for himself to do all day and would lead his subordinates to follow him around like a spinning top. Turan knew what he meant and sighed. The little princess has left for 2 days. It feels like without her, the entire palace has become much quieter. That's right, the little princess isn't here. Master has nothing to do, so he can only torment us. I really miss the days when there was a princess, a master, and good food in the palace. Huo Ling let out a deep sigh. Don't complain. Eat the tangerine and quickly come down to work. Otherwise, water spirit will skin you alive in the afternoon. Turan turned and walked away after saying this. What? Water spirit was coming? What a joke. He didn't want to taste her whip. Huo Ling bit the tangerine and immediately jumped down the tree, anxiously following him. In the study, Xiao Su was currently flipping through files. Because the Chief Justice was sick and had taken a month's leave, the Sichuan Emperor had him temporarily take over the position. Thus, he moved all the files that had not been dealt with to the palace to deal with them. Huo Ling and Turan entered the room while playing around. Master. Xiao Su nodded. At this time, Water Spirit also arrived at the study. She was wrapped up tightly. If she didn't take off her veil, no one would be able to see her identity. How was it? After Water Spirit bowed, Xiao Su asked. The 3 people present all knew that their master was asking about the young Wang Fei. Water Spirit was responsible for gathering information. Now, she had an additional task, which was to report the daily activities of the young Wang Fei in Hugua Temple. It was only at this moment that they could feel their master relax. Water Spirit took off her veil and stood in front of the table, looking refreshed. She said with a smile, "Today, young Wang Fei followed Her Majesty the Empress and chanted sutras in the main hall of Buddhism. No one made things difficult for her. But little Princess Consort has done an amazing thing." Xiao Su's interest was piqued. Oh. Tell me about it. Water Spirit did not keep everyone in suspense. She showed the little Wang Fei's skill in makeup in front of the Furen and promoted the store that was about to open in Huaxiu. It had a great promotional effect. As Water Spirit described everything in detail, Xiao Su's lips slowly curled. No wonder she was his little one. Her brain turned very quickly. She was good at doing business. Huo Ling clicked her tongue. Young Wang Fei is mighty. She can find business opportunities like this. Turan thought deeper. He said, this subordinate feels that maybe in the near future, young Wang Fei can pull in a large portion of the power of the court to stand on our side. Or rather, she can use this circle to gather information that is beneficial to us. Water Spirit nodded. I also think the same. Even though I can't see any concrete results right now, but this is a hidden potential that can be excavated. After the 3 of them finished speaking, they all looked at their master who was sitting on the main seat. Xiao Su said unconcernedly, Ben Wang does not need Ayan to sacrifice herself for anything. Everything will be done according to her preferences. You do not need to make things difficult for her because of these things. The 3 looked at each other. Master's love for young Wang Fei was bone deep. This subordinate understands. But they also respected young Wang Fei very much, just like how they respected their master. So they would not make things difficult for young Wang Fei and make her do things she did not like. Right, master, young Wang Fei had someone tell you that she has already convinced the Empress. She will not make things difficult for Chu eldest master and Chu eldest madam. When they enter the city, she hopes that you can bring them into the Fu. Water Spirit immediately said when she thought of this. Xiao Su laughed brightly. She did something that Ben Wang could not do. Very good. Tell her that Ben Wang will take care of her father-in-law and mother-in-law. She does not need to worry. Turan and the others could hear the pride and joy in their master's voice. They couldn't help but smile. At this time, Huang Yi walked in with a bowl of fragrant soup. Lord, this is the chicken soup this servant just made today. Huang Yi placed the bowl on the table as she spoke. Xiao Su did not even look at it. Take it away. Ben Wang does not have an appetite right now. Huang Yi said with a smile, this is what young Wang Fei told me before she left. I have to make a bowl of soup for you every day and watch you drink it. Lord, don't make things difficult for this servant. Hualing winked at his two companions on the side. Young Wang Fei is really thoughtful. Even when she is not in the Fu, she will have people watch over master for her. It seems like she cares a lot about our master. It's a pity that we are all alone and don't even have someone to care about us. It really is. Io, before he could finish his sentence, a file landed on his head. Ha ha ha, Water Spirit looked at Hualing who was holding his head and howling in pain and laughed. This is called retribution. Turan couldn't help laughing. Xiao Su who was sitting at the head of the table also softened his expression. He said to Huang Yi, leave it there first. Ben Wang will drink it later. Huang Yi finally bowed and left. Young Wang Fei really has a way. If it was anyone else, master probably wouldn't even look at them. Water Spirit said with a smile after walking out of the study. That's right. Don't you know how important young Wang Fei is in master's heart? Hualing said with a laugh. All right, stop wasting time. Let's get down to business. Turan reminded the two of them. Hualing and Water Spirit looked at each other. This Turan really was a workaholic. Time slowly passed and the sun set in the west. Xiao Su closed the file in his hand and raised a hand to rub his eyes. He saw the soup on the table that was no longer steaming. Remembering that this was the little fellow's order, he couldn't help but pick it up and drink it in one gulp. Hong Yi who was standing in the hallway of the courtyard had been hiding behind a pillar the entire time, paying close attention to the study. When she saw Xiao Su drink the soup through the window, her eyes lit up with a strange light. Great, the medicine would take effect in 2 hours. At that time, she wanted to see how long this Liu Xiahui could last. She pinched her handkerchief as she thought about what kind of expression Chu Qingyan would have when she came back and found that she couldn't drive her away. As long as she succeeded tonight, she wouldn't be afraid of anything. Because she had the Empress behind her. Thinking of this, her lips curled. Then she had to go back now to prepare for tonight. Chapter 1108. The setting sun cast a large patch of pale yellow light on the ground. From afar, it was magnificent and beautiful, making one unable to bear to look away. Chu Qingyan sent away the palace maid sent by Empress Liang to learn how to put on makeup. She stretched lazily and leaned against the door frame, admiring the magnificent scenery of nature. Jasper, tell me, there are so many beautiful things in life. Why do some people cling to those imaginary power? Chu Qingyan suddenly lamented. Jasper stood behind her and thought for a moment. Perhaps it's because of human selfishness. Some people have tasted the days of not having enough to eat and not having enough to wear, so they don't want to suffer and do anything for wealth. Or perhaps it's because they're greedy and want to have more things. Chu Qingyan turned to look at her and nodded approvingly. Our Jasper is so smart. Jasper smiled and lowered her eyebrows. Actually, Master already understands these principles. Why do you still need to ask this subordinate? Just take it that I'm bored. Sigh, she really wanted to be a big ice cube. And her family's little high, the little troublemakers. After sighing to the sky, she turned and prepared to return to her room. But at this moment, a dart flew through the air. Jasper quickly stretched out 2 fingers to catch it. Then she chased after it, but the figure was nowhere to be seen. She returned and handed the dart to her master. Master, there's a letter on it. Chu Qingyan took it and opened it to see what was written on it. 2 hours later, see you at the usual place. Usual place? Master, who is this person? Jasper was very puzzled after reading the words. Chu Qingyan pinched the letter and smiled. At first, I didn't know either. But after thinking about it, I knew who it was. 2 hours later. Chu Qingyan walked into the forest. The darkness in front of her eyes slowly faded away until it was completely replaced by the light of the fire. She saw the person sitting under the tree and tending to the fire. I can smell the aroma of meat from afar. Tell me, is it appropriate for you to openly murder living creatures in this peaceful place of Buddhism? Chu Qingyan walked closer and stood in front of him. She crossed her arms and teased him. At this time, Higashio Motetsu was still wearing his mask. He flipped the meat on the grill with one hand and added firewood with the other. When he heard Chu Qingyan's words, he chuckled. Originally, I planned to enjoy the blessings together. But now, it seems that there is no need. Chu Qingyan immediately sat down and muttered, Hey, you can't be so selfish and swallow such a big chicken all by yourself. Higashio Motetsu laughed, then pulled off a leg and handed it to her. This is for you. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue, but still took it and couldn't wait to eat it. Ah, hot. Seeing her grimace in pain, Higashio Motetsu shook his head in a good mood and sneered, Why are you so impatient? No one is snatching it from you. Chu Qingyan opened her mouth and said in an aggrieved tone, You don't know, but I've already eaten several meals of vegetarian dishes. There is no oil in the tofu and vegetables. I'm afraid that if I eat a few more meals, I will become a radish. Hearing her description, it was very interesting. Didn't you tell those young ladies and madams today that eating vegetarian dishes is good for detoxification, causing the temple's kitchen to go down the mountain to purchase a lot of vegetables and frighten many young monks? Is that so? It seems like these people really believe my words. However, I'm not wrong either. They've been feasting every day, and I don't know how much fat they've accumulated. I'm just doing good. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and revealed a mischievous smile. He added a few pieces of wood to the fire and then focused on roasting it. You're right. And I came out this time to give you a good meal. How about it? I'm a good friend, right? Chu Qingyan gave him a thumbs up. Yes, definitely. Higashio Motetsu smiled and pulled another drumstick for her. She didn't refuse, one in each hand. Seeing her eating so happily, he felt inexplicably happy and also tore a piece and put it in his mouth. I say, Dongting, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Tell me, what do you want? After Chu Qingyan finished 2 drumsticks, she licked her fingers and then tilted her head to look at him. Cough. Higashio Motetsu choked and coughed until tears came out of his eyes. After he calmed down, he said indignantly, I say, is my impression in your heart that bad? Can't we have a good chat? Chu Qingyan raised both her hands in surrender. Alright, then let's really roast meat and admire the moon and reminisce about old times. Hearing this tone, why did he feel awkward? Speaking of which, are you really here to see me? Could it be fake? I'll believe you for now, but aren't you afraid that Xiao Ran will find out that you left your post without permission? Higashio Motetsu smiled proudly. Looks like you're still worried about me. Don't worry, I've made arrangements and no one will come near this forest. You can eat without worry. When Chu Qingyan heard him say this, her heart thumped. She said with a smile that didn't look like a smile, since when can the Jianghu sects arrange for the imperial court soldiers? In order to see you, I've spent a lot of money. Don't be ungrateful. Higashio Motetsu's eyes flashed as he replied in a casual tone. She snorted lightly. Although she didn't show it on her face, the suspicion in her heart didn't lessen. Hurry up and eat. Otherwise, I won't be responsible if the food gets cold. He urged. Chu Qingyan didn't have any appetite. She could clearly feel that he was avoiding something. In the end, she couldn't help but ask. Dongting, who ordered the Moon Palace sect to assassinate His Highness? The atmosphere quieted down in an instant. Neither of them spoke. Crackle, a sound came from the fire. Chu Qingyan's voice also sounded in the dark night. Dongting, I've said before that you can't lie to me anymore. Otherwise, we can't even be friends. Higashio Motetsu didn't answer. He calmly added the last piece of firewood and patted the wood shavings off his hands. Then, he stared at her. Chu Qingyan felt the emotions floating in his eyes. She couldn't understand it. What do you want to know? It was as if after waiting for a long time, he finally got to hear her question. This kind of feeling was like a hanging stone falling to the ground. He knew that with her intelligence, she would see through him sooner or later. However, he didn't have the heart to hide it from her. The night gradually deepened. In the silent night, the sound of cicadas and frogs were particularly clear. After dealing with a file, Xiaosu looked at the sky. The little fellow's instructions before she left flashed in his ears. He glanced at the mountain of files on the table and finally chose to get up and return to his room. Although the prince's mansion was full of his people, they were basically the little fellow's spies. In order to avoid her nagging when she came back, it was better for him to go back and wash up early. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile helplessly. However, just as he stood up, he suddenly frowned. He felt something strange in his body. His palms were sweaty and his whole body was hot. His body swayed slightly and he almost couldn't stand. Chapter 1109. Xiaosu was barely able to support himself with the table. He could feel that there was an evil fire running around in his body. He deeply furrowed his brows. He wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. He took a deep breath and suppressed the evil fire. Someone come. Huoling and Turan immediately pushed open the door. Master, what orders do you have? As soon as he finished speaking, Huoling asked in surprise, are you not feeling well? Xiaosu raised his hand to stop him. Someone drugged this king. Immediately lock down the entire king's palace. Don't let anyone leave, especially the people in the inner courtyard. After saying this, he forced himself to walk out the door. Huoling and Turan followed closely. Master, where are you going? Xiaosu turned around with a cold expression, I'm going out for a bit. Wait for me to come back and take care of everything. Huoling and Turan looked at each other and accepted the order. Xiaosu walked to the corridor and jumped onto the roof. With a few jumps, he disappeared into the night. What's wrong with Master? Huoling was very confused. Turan was also confused. Whatever Master says, will do. There's nothing wrong with it. Huoling thought the same. At this time, in the middle of the night, in the quiet forest. The two of them were silent. Higashio Motetsu's words just now were undoubtedly a tacit admission that he was hiding something from her. And after she confirmed her guess, she felt like she couldn't move forward. Confirming was one thing, but tearing open the truth was another. She suddenly didn't want to move forward anymore. He looked at her for a while and revealed a faint smile. It was different from his usual frivolous attitude. Instead, there was a faint helplessness and frustration. Little girl, do you feel like this is very difficult? Judging a friend like this? Chu Qingyan closed her eyes and let out a breath. Then, she slowly opened them. Dong Ting, I know that you didn't participate in the Moon Palace's assassination of Big Ice Cube before, but I want to know, what about now? The eyes in front of him were too clear and he couldn't meet her gaze. He looked away. I am the Moon Palace's young palace master. These words indirectly answered her question. Dong Ting, you know that I don't want to be like this, so why are you still pretending as if nothing has happened? I know you like to play around, but is the relationship between friends something you can play around with? She was too angry and her tone was a little too harsh. When she saw the eyes of the person in front of her flicker, she moved her lips and lowered her eyebrows, saying sorrowfully, I'm sorry. The little girl's words were like thorns that pierced into the depths of his heart. He looked up and glared at her. Qingyan, we're friends. It has nothing to do with anyone. I won't hurt you. It's just that we're on different sides. Is that not okay? Chu Qingyan frowned and said firmly, my friends will never hurt the people I care about. So Xiaosu is the most special person in your heart. Even if I treat you extremely well, if I hurt a hair on your family's Xiaosu, I won't be forgiven. Higashio Motetsu narrowed his eyes and asked word by word. His gaze made her breath catch, but she still insisted on her point of view. Dong Ting, you're wrong. No matter if it's Big Ice Cube, Yen Luo, my parents, or you, as long as it's someone I care about, I won't allow anyone to hurt them. So you can't compare them like this. Higashio Motetsu smiled gently. The sharpness in his eyes seemed to have been blown away by the night wind and disappeared into the depths of his eyes. Only a faint self-deprecation was left. He stood up and took 2 steps forward, his back facing her. Chu Qingyan stood up with him. Qingyan, I sincerely want to be friends with you. I don't want anyone or anything to affect our previous relationship, he said in a low voice. Chu Qingyan didn't notice the emotion in his words. She looked at his back and said, Dong Ting, have you ever thought that if we stand on opposite sides, we'll have to fight each other for the people behind you and for the people I want to protect? Do you think we can still be as calm as before? This was the gap between the two of them. It was a fact that couldn't be ignored. She didn't know if he couldn't see it clearly or was unwilling to see it clearly. He remained silent. He had thought of these consequences before. Qingyan, will there really be a day when we fight to the death? He asked softly. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and looked at his back. She blinked and said, if you insist on fighting Big Ice Cube for the people behind you, I think I'll have to fight you sooner or later. Actually, in your heart, I'm not that important, right? His low voice was no longer as beautiful as before. Chu Qingyan took a step forward and explained anxiously, Dong Ting, you're my friend. You're important to me. As soon as she finished speaking, he sneered and said, but when it comes to Xiao Su, everyone has to make way for him. She was clearly asking who the people behind him were. Why did the topic change to something so strange? At this moment, Chu Qingyan didn't know what to say. And at this moment, the person in front of her didn't seem to want to say anything more. He didn't say a word and was about to walk forward. Dong Ting, she called out to him. Little girl, I won't hurt you. Maybe I held you hostage before, but I won't do it again. But I won't show mercy to Xiao Su. After he finished speaking, he disappeared before her eyes in a few flashes. Chu Qingyan wanted to stop him, but it was too late. She scratched her head. Why did everything turn out like this? It was as if she was the one in the wrong. At this moment, Higashio Motetsu jumped onto the tree trunk. He reached out and pressed his hand to his chest, his heart aching. Little girl, I'm sorry. Maybe this way, you won't feel awkward when you draw your sword on me. Only a heartless person can live freely. But most of the time, it's not up to them. I'm not exempt from this. His lips pursed into a line. With a few leaps, he disappeared into the darkness. The fire slowly burned out. Chu Qingyan hugged her knees and sat in a daze for a long time. Gradually, she felt cold. She snapped out of her daze and stood up to stomp her feet. She happened to step on a chicken bone, making a crisp sound. She was stunned. He deliberately came out tonight to find her. Actually, it wasn't just to give her a good meal. Maybe he wanted her to interrogate him. She looked up at the cold moon in the sky. Her eyes were misty. Dong Ting, why did you do this? The moon couldn't give her an answer. She smiled bitterly and finally slowly walked out of the forest. But her mind was in a trance. Although she walked out of the forest, she walked in the opposite direction. Just as she was about to walk back, she saw a person dressed in gray sitting by the stone table. She couldn't help narrowing her eyes. When she saw the figure, she couldn't help but walk over. At this time, she was in a bad mood and needed to talk to someone. Chapter 11:10. Su Jian glanced at the person sitting in front of him. He put down the chess piece in his hand and smiled. Almsgiver Chu, are you troubled? When she saw him sitting in the courtyard, she didn't hesitate to walk over. Then, she saw him play chess with her and said, I'll be your opponent. So, the two of them played together, one playing white chess and the other playing black chess. However, the black and white image on the chessboard dazed her slightly. When she heard his question, she replied gloomily. Su Jian, what kind of friend do you think is considered a true friend? Su Jian was not surprised by her sudden question because he often received all kinds of strange questions when he was in the temple or walking outside. Hence, Chu Qingyan's question was the most common. However, he was still a little surprised. Ever since they met, she had always been an optimistic and positive person. It was rare to see her so depressed. He guessed that it had something to do with the word friend. The definition of a friend is actually very broad. It includes a meeting, a nodding acquaintance, a drinking and meet friend, a pleasant meeting, a congenial conversation, genuine concern, a life and death situation. These are all definitions. However, if you want to consider a true friend, it depends on how you interpret it. Just like the word Buddha, it has different meanings in different hearts. Chu Qingyan could not help but roll her eyes at Su Jian's words. Isn't that the same as not saying anything? Su Jian was not annoyed by her words. He smiled and said, actually, you already have a definition in your heart. Why are you still asking this penniless monk? Chu Qingyan was stunned again. She indeed had her own set of standards for friends. Dong Ting was one of the few friends she had in ancient times, and she cherished it very much. However, she could not accept that he would lay his hands on the person closest to him. More accurately, he would hide in the shadows and lay his hands on the big ice cube without them knowing. This was something she could not forgive. Su Jian, she said softly and slowly. When he heard his name come out of her mouth again, he felt a little different. He steadied his mind and said, go on. When your best friend attacks the person you love the most, what will you do? She raised her head. Her eyes were bright and filled with anticipation. Su Jian was dazzled by her bright eyes. It was rare to see such a serious and sincere look. Benefactor Chu, I'm a poor monk who has nothing but emptiness. Distance, greed, anger, infatuation, and hatred. I have no love. Your analogy is somewhat inappropriate. Chu Qingyan took a deep breath. Why isn't this monk enlightened? All right, change the subject of this metaphor. For example, me. Su Jian lightly smiled. Nothing can be forced. Chu Qingyan snorted. What kind of answer was that? You're not just trying to fool me, are you? Su Jian shook his head. You've already mentioned 3 things. His best friend and the person he loves the most. Since he's decided to take action, he's naturally considered you. However, he still insists on doing so. This means that this matter is set in stone and won't change because of you. Since that's the case, why should you worry? This is the result. Su Jian's words revealed what she was thinking. She felt suffocated and her chest hurt a little. She held her forehead and mocked herself, as expected, honest advice grates on the ear, and good medicine tastes bitter, but the first needle hits the blood. The truth is always so cruel and merciless. Originally, he had been worried for her, but after hearing her teasing words, although he was still a little disappointed, he was much better than before. He picked up a white piece and placed it on the chessboard. Su Jian, do you really have no friends? Su Jian was right. Since this was already set in stone, what ability did she have to change it? She was just asking for a snub. It was not in her nature to be sad. At this moment, she focused all her attention on the person in front of her. He nodded. The highest realm of Buddhism is to not be tainted by the mortal world. Only by severing the 7 emotions and 6 desires and treating all things as emptiness can one attain the Tao. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan felt that living like this was meaningless. Don't you find life dull and boring? Don't you have anyone to complain to and have fun with? Su Jian shook his head. He did not think it was bad at all. This poor monk has already left the mortal world, so I don't feel depressed. A person's happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy are all summed up in the 8 hardships of life: birth, old age, sickness, death, love, separation, resentment, longing, and unable to let go. Since I've already seen through it, why would there be loneliness and boredom when I've left it all behind? Although she respected Buddhism, she felt that it was a pity for such a good young man to be immersed in such a long and boring journey of seeking Buddhism. Su Jian, I think you're wrong. I think that the true Buddhism is to hide in the city and see through the mortal world, but also hide in the mortal world and temper oneself in the mortal world. True knowledge comes from tempering oneself in the mortal world, just like how wine and meat pass through the intestines, but Buddha remains in the heart. Chu Qingyan's words made Su Jian feel that she was being unreasonable. Almsgiver Chu, she knew what he wanted to say, so she raised her hand to stop him. She continued, Su Jian, do you know what those who are ranked in the celestial class, who are ranked before Buddhism, need to do? Su Jian did not know what she was trying to say. They need to do one thing, and that is to experience the mortal world and experience greed, anger, stupidity, and hatred. They need to experience what you call the 8 hardships of life. Then, they need to be enlightened and cultivate to seek the Tao. The eyes of the person in front of her shone brighter than the stars in the sky. But more importantly, he fell into deep thought because of her words. Su Jian, if you haven't experienced life and death in the mortal world, if you can't let go of love, separation, and resentment, how can you see through the most complicated human heart? If you haven't experienced it, everything is like an armchair strategist. No matter how touching your Zen theory is, no matter how accurate your analysis is, you won't understand what kind of suffering the person you're trying to help has gone through. Buddha said that they came to deliver all living beings from suffering. How do they do that? In reality, all of you are just armchair strategists. She did not know why she suddenly had such a thought. After Chu Qingyan said it out loud, it was probably because she felt a little sad for him when he said that he had no friends. How could a person not have any friends in this world? Wouldn't that be too lonely? Had he damaged his brain from reading too many Buddhist scriptures? Su Jian was already a little confused by her string of words. These words were something he had never heard before. He subconsciously felt that it was her twisted logic again, but he also did not know how to refute it. Just like the previous few times, she was always able to find words to make him speechless. She looked at the person in front of her and muttered, Su Jian, I actually think that I should be considered your friend. Maybe it's just a one-sided feeling. Su Jian stood rooted to the ground in a daze.